Can the integrated systems we see in life today evolve by natural processes? It'll be a frosty day in hell when that happens. Today, I'm going to give you four scientific reasons to reject evolution. I'm going to focus in on one of them and give you a specific piece of evidence against evolution. Then I'm going to bring my frosted challenge to a close. And after that, if anybody wants to come on and challenge what I've said, you're welcome to join the stream. I've put the link I will put the link in the chat and invite you to join and share your evidence for and against evolution. So let's just start with the 4 reasons you should reject evolution. Number 1 is the proposed mechanisms for evolution are grossly insufficient for producing the diversity of life on Earth we see today. I'm not going to go more deeply into that one today, but I've done more on that in the past and I'll do more in the future. The second reason you should reject evolution is that mutations, which are supposed to be driving evolution, are known to degrade organisms. It is not a good thing to get a mutation. And evolutionists, they also agree that 99.9% of mutations are deleterious. But somewhere, if we're going to build all of these incredibly complex systems on Earth, we need mutations to coordinate together, thousands of them, millions of them, to build new genes in organisms. And that is something that we do not see. We see mutations degrading. Number 3, integrated systems require foresight. When you see components and multi-component systems that are working together, that's not something that happens by natural processes. It is something that has to be designed. It requires planning. It requires foresight. And that's what we see in every living organism, down to the simplest bacterium. We see integrated systems that are very complex and must work together in harmony for the life of that organism. Number 4, numerous chicken and egg problems at every system and cell level. And so when you look at life, there are things that have to be in place simultaneously. You don't have millions of years to develop one thing without another thing. They have to be in place at the same time. Now, number 3 is what I'm focusing on today, that integrated systems require planning and foresight. And I'm going to give you an example. We're going to look at the circulatory systems. And so I'm showing a human circulatory system because this is the one that most of us are very familiar with. So think about what has to happen for a human circulatory system to work. You have to have blood vessels, and the heart all working together. And they have to, they can't just evolve separately. They have to work together. And what good would it do to evolve blood vessels throughout a system without blood? And what good would it do to have blood without the blood vessels? What good would it do to have a big bulging thing in your chest without all of these systems in place? These are things that need to be planned out and coordinated. And you don't have millions of years for this. If you don't have a working circulatory system, then the organism dies. Right now, if your blood is not able to deliver the nutrients to all the cells in your body, you're going to die within minutes. So to think that this is something that can come together by natural processes over time is very naive. Now, think about it's not just the blood vessels and the heart and the blood that has to work together. Your circulatory system is integrated with all the other systems in your body. It has to work in harmony interdependently with your respiratory system, your digestive system, your endocrine system, your urinary system, your immune system. All of these things are integrated. Think about what a compact space you have all of these systems working in. That is something that requires planning and foresight. Now, some people are satisfied with evolutionary explanations of, oh, you see, but that came about. See, it didn't start that way. It started out so simply. And if you're believing that, you're believing an evolutionary story. Look at this, even just hemoglobin. These are the steps required in order to get hemoglobin. You're probably not going to be able to read all these, and I'm not going to read all these, but Google it. Look at all the steps required just to get hemoglobin. And then if you're satisfied with, oh, but you know, the simplest life forms, look at their, it started so simply. Well, look at the cross section of this worm. Okay, although the worm is small, when you look inside, it's incredibly complex. It has a complex integrated system already in place. We do not have the development of the circulatory system over time. Now, some people have said, oh, but you're not using peer-reviewed paper. Well, here we go. We're going to look at this paper. It's the evolutionary origins of the blood vascular system and endothelium. And so, by the way, some of the best evidence against evolution is in papers like this. So this paper goes through, it shows several different circulatory systems and describes them. And here it's showing the worm, and it tells the features of this, that it's a closed circulatory system. So, and it, you know, basically it does all of the things of transporting oxygen, nutrients, and waste, just like a human circulatory system transports and delivers the nutrients and gets rid of the waste. And here's one for a lobster. And this is a different one because it's an open system. Okay. And so it's a little bit different, but also quite complex. And then we're going to just look at a few things. Now, if you want to print this out, you can get there's a link in the description of this video. You can read along if you want to read the whole thing. I only just picked out a few parts that I thought were interesting. And what I hope that people will do is, when you're looking at things about evolution, start paying attention to the difference between science and storytelling, because papers like this are rife with storytelling. So there's lots more storytelling that I didn't highlight in pink, but the parts I'm going to read, I highlighted in pink, and the real science I highlighted in green. Okay. So in the abstract, it says existing evidence suggests that the blood vascular system first appeared in an ancestor of the triploblasts over 600 million years ago. Okay, now where do they get this idea? We're going to find out as the paper goes on. Do they actually have evidence for this, or is this just part of their storytelling? Let's find out. Well, here we go in the introduction. And here's where we get the difference between real science and evolutionary storytelling. Starts out, every biological trait requires both a proximate and an evolutionary explanation. Proximate explanations, how, employ traditional tools, including biochemistry, molecular biology, and cell biology, to describe the anatomy, physiology, and ontology of a trait at the level of a modern day organism. Okay, I'm going to stop right there, because that is what real science is. And so many people ask me, well, if evolution isn't true, then what's going on? Like, are you saying like no science is good, or that all scientists are wrong? No, I'm saying scientists are working in spite of evolution, because most science does not require evolution. Now, it might have evolutionary ideas running in the background, but there are many evolution believing scientists that are just doing good science, and this is the things that they are focused on, things that have real world applications. Now, here's where the evolutionary storytelling begins. Evolutionary explanations, when and why, employ a combination of the fossil record and comparative morphology and DNA sequences to describe the phylogenetic history of a trait and the fitness advantage that trait provides at the level of a population or species. So they start with the assumption that evolution is true, and then they try to figure out how it happened with the fossil record, comparing morphology and comparing DNA. Okay, but remember that they're starting with that assumption. So they're going to be telling stories about how things happened based on that assumption. So they said and this is interesting. So they said the goal for this review is to explore the evolutionary organisms of the blood vascular system and the endothelium. There is no trace of the cardiovascular system in the fossil record. So the cardiovascular system, soft tissue, not really well preserved, although this paper was written like 12 years ago. And I think since then we did discover like some remnants of a heart or something in a creature called Fushanwea. I don't know, you can look it up, but so I just wanted to state that this is not the most up to date, but basically this is saying like, they're not looking at cardiovascular systems in the fossil record, right? Instead, what they're doing is they're using phylogenetic analyses based on what is alive and working today to try to reconstruct a story from the past. And it says that right here. By contrast, comparative biology provides a rich source of information that can be used to infer and reconstruct the evolutionary history of the cardiovascular system. This is all assuming that this happened, okay? So, but what if you recognize that an integrated system of a worm is not something that can come about by natural processes? Well, then you're labeled anti-science. No, that is according to our scientific observations. We do not see integrated systems coming about by natural processes, but they want to infer from the past. So let's see if they can pull off any evidence or if we're going to run into a lot of problems here. So it says, as we survey the present landscape of body plans, we find a wide variety of blood vascular systems. Some are closed, others are open. Some use hearts to propel blood, while others employ pulsatile blood vessels. Only a minority are lined by endothelium. Okay, so that's just a description of reality. Great, no problem with that. Real science. But then here we get into the pink evolutionary storytelling. The answer, okay, so when and how did all of these diverse structures evolve? The answer is likely through a combination of homology and convergence. I love this because they're stating up front that their phylogenetic tree does not work. Okay, what do they mean when they say homology and convergence? They mean, well, we see homology, similarities in organisms, but then we also see organisms that are on different branches that are evolving the same structures that are already incredibly improbable to the point of being impossible to evolve once in the first place. Now they want us to believe that this happened multiple times, and we're going to get to a specific example of that mentioned in the paper here. So, the last common ancestor of vertebrates and annelids, or of vertebrates and mollusks, was the ancestor of the protostome, deuterostome ancestor, which lived between 600 and 700 million years ago. Although the fossil record is scarce, it is widely believed that this precursor animal was a segmented bilaterian. Okay, so it is believed. This is what they are putting together as their story, and they want you to believe it. So far, no evidence has been given for this at all. This is all storytelling so far. Okay, so over the past 600 to 700 million years of evolution, the blood vascular system has undergone significant modifications in response to selective pressures experienced by individual phyla. In some cases, the blood vascular system has regressed. Okay. And they'll get to the example of that regression in a minute. But what is interesting, it actually, they say it here, in flatworms and nematodes. Okay. So in other words, their phylogenetic tree is all over the place. They've got circulatory systems that look different and all these different branches, and they really don't have a way to put it together in a way that makes sense. But look how they are already told us that although the fossil record is scarce, now they're telling us basically that they're trying to get us to accept that the blood vascular system has undergone significant modifications in response to selective pressures. How do we know this? We don't know this. There's no evidence for this. This has to be believed if you already accept the story of common ancestry. So there's no evidence being presented here that would cause us to accept this. It's just storytelling. Okay, so continuing on. Now, this is really interesting. The open system, because there's the open circulatory systems and the closed system, they're saying the open system reverted back to a closed design in an ancestral cephalopod. This is an example of convergent evolution. Now, this is really interesting because if we look at the octopus circulatory system, so unlike most mollusks, it has a closed circulatory system. Most mollusks have an open circulatory system. Now, evolving a circulatory system in the first place is not, I would say it's so improbable as to be impossible. But now you've got, you're saying the mollusks, they have these open circulatory systems, but the octopus wanted to basically go back to the closed circulatory system. So it's different. In other words, it doesn't fit in with the tree. The morphological similarities that should be present if this is one family tree are not present with the circulatory system with the octopus. And the octopus has 3 hearts. Most mollusks only have 1 heart. Octopus has blue hemocyanin. And by the way, blood is another issue because they also say that blood convergently evolved 7 times. And why do they say that? Because blood is so structurally different in so many organisms that it doesn't really match up. So blood is already an extremely complicated, difficult thing to get in the first place. But now you've got to get it to arise 7 times by natural processes. So the story is getting ridiculous. Now, you can go and read the entire paper if you want. It's 33 pages long, and it's mostly pink evolutionary storytelling. So have fun with that. But I just wanted to point out in their conclusion, here's their conclusion, an important take-home message is that cardiovascular systems are highly diverse in their structure and function. Okay. The designing requires a designer. Why are they using the word design? Why? This isn't design. This is all by natural processes. Why are we pointing to design? Well, they couldn't find a different word. Why not? Is it because this is obviously a design? So the design of a given system is exquisitely matched to the needs of the animal. It's not helpful to think of one system as being superior to another. Thank you. Yes. So you can't look at a worm and say, see, the worm, its circulatory system is so simple. And that's how the circulatory system slowly evolved over time. No, it's not that one circulatory system is superior to another. These are all, whatever organism, these are all complex integrated systems that require planning and foresight, that don't just come about by mutations and natural selection. Okay, zero evidence has been given in this entire paper. You can go check it yourself. Zero evidence has been given for the evolutionary origins of the circulatory system. Okay, so this is just something, this is a perfect example of how people are starting with the assumption of evolution by a common ancestor, and then they don't even bother providing evidence because, hey, everybody knows it happened. All we have to do is figure out the story, and then they proceed to do storytelling. So that's what I found on the evolution of the circulatory system. I welcome challenges to that, but really quick, I'm going to go through, most of you know, I'm doing this stream to close up the frosted challenge. The frosted challenge is somebody who goes by the YouTube name Frosted 1030 challenged me on evolution and said, how many papers would it take to get you to believe in evolution? How many papers with evidence for evolution? And I really don't know the answer to that, but I thought I'll tell him 10 because I can't guarantee I'll have time to read more than that. But if somebody gave me 10 good papers with evidence for evolution, hey, I don't know, that might be enough. But so Frosted gave me 10 papers, and it appears after I started looking at the papers that all he did was go on Google Scholar and just get the first 10 entries, because the first one gave good evidence against evolution, and I made a video about that. So thanks, Frosted, for giving me evidence against evolution. The second one showed the problems with analyzing data in evolutionary biology, and it showed how even with the same data, many teams can get the data, they can come to wildly different conclusions about evolution. So thank you on that one. Now I'm going through the rest, papers number 3 through 10, and this won't take long because none of them are relevant. So this one is how to validate a Bayesian evolution model. So it's all about the math of working out models. There's nothing really significant in that, and I didn't understand most of it because I don't know all of the mathy stuff. But it's not evidence for evolution. This one is about how you can use those the Markov model for like cancer patients, like to kind of like model out and see like what can happen with their cancer. So it's not really, definitely not evidence for evolution. This one is Adam Smith, evolutionary social theorist. I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses right now. But anyway, it's basically about how the evolution ideas that influenced Adam Smith. Okay, so it's about social and economic evolution. It has nothing to do with presenting evidence for evolution. Then there was one that wasn't even a paper. It was a book, and it's not available. And 4 of the papers were actually in Chinese. So if we didn't have enough evidence that Frosted just did a random Google search and took the first 10 entries, 4 were in Chinese. So Frosted, I seriously doubt that you read those papers in Chinese and provided those as evidence for evolution, but hey. All right, so this concludes the Frosted Challenge. And now I just want to mention that last time Mirza came on my channel and he shared about his thing that he wanted to mention about evolution that I still need to respond to. He brought up the onion as evidence that mutations can bring about genetic material. And so basically the onion has a lot of genetic material, and I am not done looking into that. So I will get back to you on that. I haven't forgotten it, and I'm going to make a whole stream based on that. Okay. So now I just want to put the link in the chat, and anybody wants to come on and respond to anything I said, your evidence for or against evolution, you are welcome to join. And while I'm waiting, I'll just check the comments and see what's going on. All right. Good friends here. Okay. Let's see. I see Howard's trying to join, but so hey to Junior, good to see you. And Howard is here. All right.
So, yep, can you hear me? I think I fixed the sound
Yep.
problem I had last time. And I will apologize publicly for canceling on you when we were supposed to go out in the field. I am very sorry. I couldn't fit it in. I was just exhausted from what I was doing.
No problem. We'll do it another time.
Okay, so let's go through your list. You say the proposed mechanisms are grossly insufficient. Well, we've been down this road before in science, and that's a non-argument. For example, I'll just give you one example from science. When Alfred Wegener 100 years ago or so proposed continental drift, all of the experts said there was no mechanism that could work to get the continents to move. 100 years later, we have a mechanism. It's with the circulation of the mantle. And so you don't know what mechanisms will appear in the future from scientific discovery. So we've been down this road countless times, and it's a non-argument. It doesn't work because it assumes that we have all the mechanisms that we could possibly know today, and you don't know that.
Okay, but do we usually accept something based on our hopes and wishes that we'll have observations in the future? Like, did people go ahead and accept the theory of the continental drift without evidence?
Oh, there was plenty of evidence. It was, and continental drift ended up being wrong, but plate tectonics was right, and some of the evidence, much of the evidence that Wegener used was helpful in supporting plate tectonics. So there was evidence, but there was no mechanism. And I'd say from the fossil record, we have lots and lots of evidence, and we can get to that later. So that first point is.
But it's not. I'm not letting that go because.
Well, but I'm sorry, but it doesn't work. We know repeatedly from
then
history.
Wait, hold up though. Are you saying we should accept that evolution is true before we have evidence?
No, I'm saying we can accept evolution as true before we have a good mechanism.
Okay, so what is your evidence for evolution that we should accept it as true?
Okay, well, I'll get to that, but I want to go through your list first. So
okay, well, I reject your assumption that it's okay that we don't have that our mechanisms are grossly insufficient. There's no proposed mechanism right now. So what is your proposed mechanism for how evolution can happen since the other ones have been shown to be grossly insufficient?
What I'm saying is it doesn't matter. Again, scientific history shows repeatedly that people had evidence that something happened with no mechanism to explain it, and then the mechanism came later. And so we know from history this argument fails over and over again. You're assuming we're at some special time in history, and we're not. You don't know what mechanisms will be discovered in the future. So let's focus on what the evidence is, and then we can get to the mechanisms later, perhaps.
Okay.
I'm going to get into an argument about the mechanisms. So let me go to another one. So number one doesn't work. So number three, integrated systems require foresight. What's your evidence to support that?
My evidence to support that is that we do not see integrated systems forming by natural processes.
Give me an example.
Well, let's have a computer. Would you leave a bunch of metal parts around and assume that they would come together and spontaneously form into a computer?
No. So computers were made by people, right? Okay, so can you give me another example where an integrated system can't form naturally?
No, you're working in the opposite direction. You need to give me an example of an integrated system that can form by natural processes. And what you're going to try to do is say, oh, life. But you're assuming that life did that without being able to demonstrate it. So
and you're assuming life can't do it without being able to demonstrate it. You can have 100 examples of integrated systems created by engineers, and you still don't know that there's one that wasn't. You're just storytelling. That's all it is.
But the difference here, Howard, is that I admit I believe a story, but you're trying to say that you believe a story too, but you're trying to say that your story is science when actually it's not.
We'll get to that. So number three doesn't work because it's inductive reasoning, which, as I've said before on this channel, was rejected by scientists 300 or 400 years ago. Creationists love it. because they say, well, we don't have a counterexample, and so that means that it can't happen. But we know from history, counterexamples can appear in the future. And so that number 3 doesn't work. Chicken and egg.
Go ahead. Let's let Junior interject something.
Sorry, because I just wanted to kind of slow down the river because it's already going really fast back and forth. But yeah, I just wanted to say hi to both you, Dr. Howard. Nice to have you once again, Dr. Howard. Round 2, huh? But yeah, I do like to speak to you as well, Dr. Howard. It was fun last time. And and that's why we're here to discuss these things, And but the way you're doing it, I think because you very quickly to dismiss things without going deep into it. It's number 1 doesn't work because it isn't that. Number 2 doesn't work, so that's not true. I think that's not very. You need to allow. If you say something's not gonna work, you need to dive deep. You can't just say number 1 doesn't work because of this, number 2 doesn't work because of that. You know what I mean? So we need to slow down the rhythm a little bit like that. It doesn't work like that to just dismiss things this way.
Well, it does work because number 1, the proposed mechanism is grossly insufficient. We've seen many examples in science where this was used as an argument and it turned out to be wrong.
But and all we need to do, we still have not heard any evidence for evolution. So how about getting to the evidence for evolution?
Okay, so let's talk about evidence for evolution. The fossil record, I think, is excellent evidence for evolution. So here's some things to consider that, I think you can't use the evidence we're going to present. You can't use it to prove evolution, but you can use it to prove there cannot possibly have been a single special creation. So, for example, in the Precambrian, which supposedly, according to most creationists, is pre-flood, there are no modern animals. None. There's no modern plants. And it's not a preservational issue because there are animals preserved in the very, very late Precambrian, one of which might be modern, but most people agree it wasn't or isn't. And there are lots and lots of other animal fossils that don't look anything like anything living today, and most of the Precambrian is barren. But there are things that get easily preserved, like teeth and bones, especially bones of large animals like dinosaurs or elephants, and there are none of them in the Precambrian. And the best, we have stromatolites, and even in the stromatolites, there are individual cells that are preserved, and yet we don't find any pollen, no pollen at all. There's no fish scales. There's no teeth. There's no bears or dinosaurs or chickens or goats, and no trees, no roots. And so I think this proves that there cannot have been a vibrant living economy at that time.
Okay, but Howard, do you see what you're doing again, though? Because I'm asking for evidence for evolution, positive evidence for evolution. But every single time you come on and you share evidence against the story I believe, but you need to show the positive evidence for the story that you believe. And the story you believe does not match the fossil record. What we see in the fossil record is sudden appearances of forms. Complete and sudden appearances of forms. We do not see the development of forms over time. And that's why there's always, the Cambrian explosion. The Avalon explosion. The Great Devonian explosion. You have all these explosions. But the reason you have to say there's all these explosions is because there's no step-by-step development. Should be millions of transitional fossils for every single form. And instead, there's like a couple that we point to and say, see, it's a transition. Instead, where's the transition up to the bat wing? Where's the transition up to a fish? Where are the transitions? There's very few things that can be pointed to as a transition when there should be many more transitionals than fully formed organisms that we see today.
Well, I think you're wrong about the way you're presenting my arguments, because if evolution is not true, then you can't really explain the lack of fossils in the Precambrian. Because if all those things were living then, it would require that there'd be some odd circumstances where things didn't get preserved. There are places where there is no unconformity at the base of the Cambrian. And so you can just look at the fossils going through that transition and show that they're just appearing. And there's preservational biases, of course. And we do have many transitions, especially in microfossils. The transitions in microfossils.
I mean, if you want something to be a transition, you will be. And that's what I'm hearing from you. I want this to be a transition, and therefore it is. Which I can show you many quotes from people that actually work in this field admitting that there's no transitions.
Well, I don't care. One of the things that creationists like to rely on is opinion. And opinion isn't evidence. If somebody says,
you definitely not doing an opinion right now, are you? Are you telling an opinion? Because it sounds like an opinion.
I'm stating evidence.
Wait, I haven't heard any evidence for evolution yet. So, what piece of evidence would you like to provide for evolution?
Well, the gradual appearance of different types of animals in terrestrial environments. So we have, in the Cambrian, there are no terrestrial animals. By the time we get up to the Permian, we have terrestrial therapsids as vertebrates. I'm just talking about vertebrates. We have therapsids. The transition from therapsids to mammals is very well documented. And that's a nice transitional.
That doesn't prove evolution, though. That literally does not prove evolution. If anything, that the fact that things share a certain level of similarity actually shows design and intent, because you see how using the similarity between organisms as proof of evolution.
Well,
it's really kind of circular. It's really kind of circular.
I was asking about transitional fossils, and I'm giving you some examples, and now you're saying that even that isn't sufficient. So
because it's not. Yeah.
There are transitional fossils, and there is evidence of transition in the fossil record, but there's also a lot of bias, like bats. I mean, bats almost never get preserved, so of course we're not going to see.
Wait a minute, hold up. We have, as far as I understand, we have 1,000 complete bat fossils. Okay, so we have 1,000 complete bat fossils, and not a single one showing a transitional form getting to a bat. What did those bat wings just appear out of nowhere? Why do we have 1,000? If we have 1,000 fully formed bats, it seems like we should have thousands of transitionals up to that point.
I just don't know anything about the fossil record of bats, so I can't comment on it. But
you commented on the fossil record, though, and I guess I can give you a little problem as well, so you can research after, which is in the Grand Canyon, the fact that we find trilobites at the very top, and only at the trilobites at the very bottom, and only at the very top we find sponges. So that's something for you to research after, Dr. Howard. That seems reverse to me.
Well, there's lots of sponge fossils in the Cambrian. Maybe not in the Grand Canyon, but in other places. There's lots of sponge fossils.
No, but you're missing the point. You believe each layer is millions of years. Where are the sponges? There should be simple organisms at the very bottom. Why is it not there? We believe in a catastrophic flood. That explains it. The fact that they are all switched around, the fossils are all over the place. Yeah. The flood explains that. But you believe each layer is millions of years. So what's going on there? Why is the reverse?
There are lots of sponges in the Cambrian. Maybe not.
Do you know how massive the Grand Canyon is? Is basically considered Exhibit A for evolution. In my opinion, Exhibit A for creation, but that's something else entirely.
I've never heard the Grand Canyon called an exhibit for evolution, but there are lots and lots of sponges in the Cambrian. I don't know how well documented it is, but I'm sure there's hundreds of papers on this. So, creationists like to use the Grand Canyon as if it's the only evidence in the world, and it's not. There are lots of sponges in the Cambrian. And so, the fact,
by the way,
in the Grand Canyon, I don't know what the evidence of sponges are, but certainly they occur in the oldest. There are sponges in the Burgess Shale. So
look, the flood king explains that. Yeah, no problem. Some sponges got preserved in the Cambrian, others didn't, like in the Grand Canyon. No problem. That's no proof of deep time. You know what I mean?
Well, it is, because the problem is the lack of forms that should be there if the flood story is true. And you're right. A lot of it is
the lack of what? Sorry, forms.
Well, the Burgess Shale, for example, has exquisite preservation. that kind of preservation is extremely rare. But there's no modern.
That's exactly what
there's
flood would do. Yes.
There's no modern fish in the Burgess Shale, and the question is why? Why aren't they there? There's virtually no modern organisms in the Burgess Shale, and so a lot of this, you're right, is negative.
Every single layer has.
Wait, Junior, let him finish his sentence.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, yeah.
So there is a clear progression of life. So, you asked for a transitional fossil. I think the Archaeopteryx is an excellent example of a transitional fossil. Now, you have to understand that when paleontologists, modern biologists were using the neo-Darwinian theory, when we say a transitional fossil, we don't mean the direct ancestor of modern living organisms, but you have to think of a branching bush with lots of little branches, and are we preserving at least a few fossils in those early branches that show the status of that group at that time? And if you look at in the Cretaceous and Jurassic and Cretaceous.
Also, can I just
the earliest fossil bird has a lot of characteristics of dinosaurs and very few characteristics of birds. I remember hearing a talk by Henry Morris, I think it was, a long, long time ago when I was in grad school. And he said, there's a clear division between birds and dinosaurs. Birds have feathers, dinosaurs don't. That's the end of the story. Well, now we know that's not true. There are lots of dinosaurs with feathers. And so, the morphologic distance between dinosaurs and birds has gotten smaller through time. And
that's because they birds.
I challenge that.
Well, no,
I challenge that. Because
what part do you challenge?
Well, the part I challenge is that, what has been demonstrated, and this was done by Alan Fiducia, who is a bird expert. Okay. He's an expert on birds and he's a believer in evolution. Okay. So he totally believes in evolution, but he's a bird expert, and he started getting angry when people started all this birds are dinosaurs stuff. And he was like, look, birds are not dinosaurs. Birds, and he shows the anatomy differences between them. And then with the sticking on, trying to make dinosaurs suddenly have feathers. What he did is an experiment to show that what is being seen when you see a picture of a fossil that's a dinosaur and it looks like it has feathers, what's actually happening is collagen breaking down. That's what happens when collagen breaks down, and it can look like a feather. And he demonstrated this by burying a dolphin, for a year, and showing what it looked like when it came up with how the collagen was breaking down. So there's this feathered dinosaur thing is, so far it looks to me like it's false. Okay, somebody could bring evidence. I'm not saying I have the definite on that, but I'm saying it looks like what we're seeing in the fossil record with things that look like feathers on dinosaurs is actually collagen. And what you didn't say, because you brought up an important point about Archaeopteryx, because you said it's a transitional fossil, but you said, and it doesn't really have to be in the lineage, right? And that's the thing, is that I think it appears after the appearance of other birds. It's not in the lineage. So it is, where is the actual transition? Why don't we have bird wings developing in the fossil record? Why don't we have the transition from dinosaur to birds?
Well, I think that, I don't think you're right about the fossil.
Also, Rebecca, after could you, what's the name of, oh, sorry, there's a fella here.
Well, Archaeopteryx is the oldest bird. Yeah, it's the oldest bird fossil is Archaeopteryx. So it doesn't.
Okay.
So I just looked it up because I didn't think that was right. But here's why it is a transition. It doesn't mean, when we say we're looking for a transition, we are not going to see every single thing, but there's a lot of things we do see. For example, in Archaeopteryx, the mouth has a snout with lots of sharp teeth and not a beak. And that is something that doesn't exist in birds, but does exist in dinosaurs. And when people say, there's a very few experts that say birds didn't come from dinosaurs, but they think that they came from the immediate ancestor of dinosaurs. So the difference is tiny. But also, Archaeopteryx has a long bony tail, which does not occur in birds, modern birds, but does occur in dinosaurs. Archaeopteryx has a lot of vertebrae in the neck, which does not occur in modern birds. Even ostriches, they have the same number of vertebrae as
They
the robin. Let me finish.
um
And does occur in dinosaurs. Archaeopteryx has a claw at the end of each digit, which does not occur in any modern birds and does in dinosaurs. So there's a lot of traits. You focus on the wing, and that's a good point. There is not a lot of transition to the wing, but there are transitions in other areas. So we see lots of intermediate characteristics between modern birds and dinosaurs in Archaeopteryx.
okay. Can I?
Yeah,
Sorry.
you can speak, Junior. Just let me just respond very quickly to his point, and then I'll let you go on. But there, you might be right about there's something off with the timeline on Archaeopteryx, and I'll look that up later. But go ahead, Junior.
Oh, wait. You're right. Let me correct. There is a recent discovery of a Chinese fossil, also from the Jurassic, that might be a little bit older.
By the way, what's
I don't know anything about it?
What's the name of the? I forgot his name now, Rebecca. He's been on your show before. The one that says in 2025 whatever, evolution is dead. You know, the bold one. I forgot his name now. But anyway, is the one that interviewed many evolutionists, right? He went all.
Oh, you're talking about Doctor. He was on your show, Doctor.
Oh, Sal.
Yeah.
Medical doctor.
Yeah. Anyway, but anyway, because he's done great work going all over the world and interviewing evolutionists on this topic.
Oh, you're breaking up, Junior.
Oh, hello, testing.
He's talking about Dr. Carl Warner.
Is my voice
okay.
working?
Yes.
Is my voice working?
I'm sorry,
okay
you're
now?
breaking up for me. I don't know if it's everyone else or for that way for everyone.
It's Carl Warner he's talking about.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, he shows that in every layer there's modern fossils. So no, the assumption is wrong. The layers shows this progression of only supposed ancient creatures to new ones. That's not true when you actually go and observe. And
can I respond to that, please?
Okay, so you make a lot of points, and then you say, "Let me finish." So let me make a lot of points responding to your many points before you respond.
And then let me after you finish your points, let Mirza speak, and then
I can wait. Yeah.
And also the flood can explain, because in the first sequences we find marine life. That's what we expect. By the way, the flood model does not say that water suddenly engulfed the whole world. No. CPT tells us that it was a gradual tsunami going back and forth, slowly but surely flooded the entire earth. So yes, of course, we're going to expect to find first it's going to bury the marine life, and then it's going to go up a little bit, and it's going to bury the whatever's on the beaches, and it's going to move up and up, and humans are going to be probably last. That's probably why you just never see the ancient humans, dinosaurs are obviously in between that. So it's because the flood, it's not just instantaneous thing. No, it's a slow and gradual process that happened quickly. And the evidence supports the fact that we find this this gradual from marine life to small mammals and such, and insects and dinosaurs and such. You interpret as evolution through millions of years, but again, it really does not have, especially because we know that these catastrophes can create sediments really quickly, as has been demonstrated many times. I got videos if you want to see people doing demonstrations of very fast sediments running through water and creating the exact same bends that we see everywhere in geology, basically. And I just wanted to clarify real quick, by the way. Last time you said about bioturbation. Well, that's another thing that we can both explain, isn't it? It's not going to prove one or the other. We can both explain that, because I can just say that bioturbation is basically the animals getting suffocated to death and moving around the sediments and such. And then you're going to interpret that as bioturbation of ancient life. And no, they're just moving around trying to survive. So I think bioturbation is not a very good topic to to try to reach a conclusion here. It's one of those things that you interpret your way, I interpret my way, and we're not gonna get anywhere talking about bioturbation, basically. I know. So far, I talked about the fact that we find many modern fossils on each layer, and the fact that the flood can explain this slow, gradual thing, and Arcteryx, the same doctor that's been on Rebecca's show that you said his name, also showed many flaws, many frauds, many frauds, especially coming from China. You were talking about a Chinese fossil there a moment ago. That it is known now that there's a fake fabrication factory of fossils in China, and that's where the supposed Arcteryx or whatever his name is came from. And yeah, it's been debunked. The very person that published the work on Arcteryx revealed to him that it was a fraud. It was actually a fraud, the Arcteryx publication. So I don't know about you, but that's a huge problem when you literally frauding things just to prove your model,
May I respond to that, please?
Yeah, you can respond.
No, I'm asking Rebecca. She's the moderator.
Well, yes, but I want to give the other two a chance to go, so please make it quick.
All right. When you say there's, I'm going to do it in reverse order. When you say there's a fraud factory in China, you have to understand the difference between a scientist going out and collecting the fossils themselves versus purchasing it from a vendor. Even if you purchase it from an American vendor, there's always they supplement missing bits with pieces from other fossils. That's very common. It's not necessarily fraud because they're selling an artwork, and a scientist should be more careful. Scientists are very trusting. If they collect it themselves and fake something, that's fraud. So that's very different. When you said Archaeopteryx is from a Chinese exhibit, that's false. Archaeopteryx has all been collected and stayed in Germany. There's very little prep work in the Archaeopteryx fossils. When you talk about bioturbation being animals struggling, that you're denying the variation of the different modes of bioturbation. There's feeding traces and dwelling traces and grazing traces, and they all show different behaviors. They're not struggling. We know what struggling looks like. They're called escape traces, and so that doesn't work.
That does work.
Modern fossils in each layer. Almost everything Dr. Carl Warner has said on that has been falsified. He grossly exaggerates things and then presents it as truth. Look at the.
Can we please not say broad statements like that we're not ready to back up with evidence? Because he's a guest that I appreciate, and I mean, it's like you can't. Like I said before, you carry a lot of authority because of your degree. So when you say that and you don't have a specific instance in mind to back up and demonstrate. Yes. It's not good.
Well,
especially because you, Dr. Howe, relies on textbooks, and he has actually went on all over the world and actually interview and look himself if these things are true or not. So if anything, he knows more on this subject. You haven't done what he did. So how can you say that he's just full of,
Well, look at the video on Carl Duff. Is it Duffy or Duff?
Joel Duff.
Yeah, Joel Duff. Thank you. He did a video on the beaver, and he showed that the ancient beaver is not a beaver at all. It's not even a placental mammal. And Warner took one statement that was kind of a poetic description of what the animal looked like and took it out of context. And it's not even close to truth what he said. And you hold me to a different standard than you hold yourself, Rebecca. You had no problem when somebody called on your channel evolution a cult. And I'm not saying anything worse than that. And so,
but that's directed toward an idea, not a person.
Right. Well, I have no problem. I've heard Carl Warner say things that I know for a fact are false. Like he said, there's no such thing as river channels in the rock record. And I know for a fact that he is speaking out of ignorance.
I don't think he said that. So I would like to see that. Can we let the other guests talk? Mirza, do you want to say something?
Yeah, there have been transitional fossils. Fossils are very rare and hard to come by. But I know, for example, we've discovered whale fossils with hind legs and so on. The other thing is Darwin didn't come up with the theory of evolution. He just explained it. But people basically looked at, they saw, for example, that sheep are similar to goats, but less similar to cows, and sheep and cows are more similar to each other than they are to dogs, and so on. So you can basically see the branching. They created the tree of life before they actually knew about the evolution. And then Darwin explained it some 100 years before DNA was discovered. And then discovery of DNA allowed us to confirm that. So yeah, that's another proof of evolution. The other thing is all these discussions get lost in details. Like, what about this fossil? What about that fossil? I don't know if you ever looked at those discussions with people who believe in flat Earth or people who don't think that moon landing is real. So they would ask, how did astronauts survive radiation in Van Allen belts, And there's an answer to that, but it's a complicated physics and engineering question that somebody, it's just not apparent. That's what I'm saying. People get, and we may never know some of these answers. We are talking about billions of years, like 4.5 billion years. You know how long 1 billion minutes is? It's 1900 years. So Christianity started 1 billion minutes ago. And we are talking about 4.5 billion years.
Sorry, what's
that is a huge amount of time.
Really quick to Mirza, and then we'll let Tyler talk. Tyler, I have you muted right now because you were making a lot of noise but if you can keep yourself muted, I'll be able to unmute you myself so you'll control your own mic. But
right.
Mirza,
so just in conclusion, basically, so we have some questions with evolution. There are some things which we may not answer. It's a very complicated subject, but at the same time, what other explanation is there? What other explanation fits better?
Well, Mirza, I would say the explanation that fits better is that there is a designer of life. There's a creator. That makes sense.
How did designer create a DNA? Like, how did he put atoms into a helix? How did he move things around? How did he do that?
I don't have the answer to that question.
So that's not an explanation, is it?
Okay.
Right?
It's not the correct explanation, but
it doesn't explain anything. You don't have answer of how these things got created.
We refer from evidence to the present to say that there's a designer. It's a fallacy to explain how God did it.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not an explanation if you can't explain it. That's what explanation means, right?
I want to respond to the other things that Mirza said about grouping the animals together before Darwin. Yes, but grouping animals together does not show evidence for evolution. You can group animals together by a variety of things. You can group them together morphologically. You can group them together genetically. You can group them together by which proteins they share. You can group them in all sorts of ways, but that does not provide evidence for evolution.
So, for example, sheep and say dogs are more related than sheep and kangaroo, even though both are herbivores. Sheep and kangaroo kind of occupy the same niche, but you can see related because they're placental mammals. Like, why would designer design it that way? That makes no sense. But and in fact, just in our life experience, we can see people in the same family look more alike, people in the same nation, people in the same race.
It doesn't make sense according to who? You?
I'm sorry? According to what?
It doesn't make sense according to who? Do you see how it's circular?
No, it's not circular. It's not circular. We know that, like, you're gonna look like your parents, and they're gonna look like their parents, and more you go down the chain, more the differences there will be. So dogs were once one animal. Now there's how many breeds of dogs, right? They came from wolves. At some point, wolves and foxes were one animal, and then they split. So as time goes, things branch, and we can basically see that in our life. We can see that in fossil record. It's just common sense, really. That's why people.
Yeah, but I'm not seeing an argument. I'm sorry, mister. I'm not seeing an argument from you. All I'm seeing
that is an argument.
God shouldn't do like this because I think he shouldn't do, and therefore evolution is true. I'm not really seeing an objective argument from you. It's so.
No. I'm not saying that God. I'm saying the God. I mean, God is not an explanation at all because you cannot tell me how God made it. That's not really an explanation of anything.
No,
You
we
just
don't
think he
have.
did
We
it, but
lit-
how
no, no, no.
did he do it?
You misclassifying how models work, and you know you're being dishonest right now. How
No,
those
no, no,
models
no, no,
work?
no, no.
We,
Like what
we
model? What
infer
model?
we
Give me a
infer
model.
from the present.
Oh, hold
Excuse
on.
me.
The
infer from the-
point of this is you guys are presenting evidence. I mean, you guys are saying that evolution is a fact. It's a scientific fact.
I'm not. No, I'm
And
saying
I'm saying that's
it's
what
the
that's
best explanation we have so far. I'm
If
not saying it explains everything we can possibly think of, and there are things we may never explain, being it's 4.5 billion
Sure.
years over the entire life of planet. There are things that you just lost in time. But so, as far as we can see, it all fits. But the God, he doesn't explain anything. He doesn't tell you how he created DNA. He doesn't tell you how. I mean, yeah. And in fact, you can see problems with God's design everywhere. Like, why do men have nipples? That makes no sense, right? Why
Thank
do
you very much.
yeah? Sorry.
Go ahead, Junior, and then let's let Tyler get in on this because he's been waiting a while.
No, sorry. Yeah, so sorry. I'm really sorry that I rather focus on other things and not these fallacies. And by the way, just a quick reminder from last time, you said about isostatic equilibrium in the Gulf of Mexico, Dr. Howard, and you know that if the mantle was hotter, it's gonna reach equilibrium faster, and you knew that, and you were saying that as if it was absolute proof of billions of years, when you know that depending on how hot it is, it's gonna be buoyant and it's gonna sink faster.
May I respond to that?
And you can respond to that, yeah.
Well, I think Rebecca should be the one who chooses.
I'm afraid this is going to keep going and going, but I do not want to let a point hang out there without you being able to respond. But Tyler has to be the next speaker. Okay, go ahead.
Me or Tyler?
Yeah, go ahead. You can go ahead, Howard. Just very quickly, please.
So you said that if the mantle is hot, then isostatic equilibrium can be achieved quickly, which is true. But then there's no mechanism for the mantle to cool down in 4,000 years. It's the classic heat problem of creationism. So if you can show me how the mantle could have cooled down, I mean, the mantle is the most volumetric portion of the Earth. Cooling it down requires a huge amount of heat loss.
Why do you think there's hot spots underneath Africa to this day? The so-called hot spots.
Okay, let's let Tyler jump in.
Okay.
Let's let Tyler jump in because this can keep going and going. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to chime in on this dinosaur thing. I mean, you have Brontosaurus, Tyrannosaurus, Triceratops, and so forth. Very different looking animals. What are the defining characteristics that make them dinosaurs? What do they all have in common that you can say, this is not a mammal, this is not a lizard, this is definitely a dinosaur? Do you know?
I can answer that.
Okay, let's let Howard answer that because I can't answer that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so dinosaurs have a specific morphology. First of all, they're reptiles, and reptiles and mammals. One is, and I should know this one. One is an anapsid, and one is a synapsid, which has to do with the morphology of the skull. And so, whichever one reptiles are, and I should know which one is which. And so the skull morphology is completely different. Also, mammals have differentiated teeth, which dinosaurs do not. They have it's all the same kind of teeth. And also the hip structure is what differentiates dinosaurs from other reptiles.
Right. So what you're going to find, no matter what kind of dinosaur you dig up, you're going to find the temporal fenestra in the back. You're going to find antorbital fenestra underneath the eye socket, possibly a mandibular fenestra. You're going to find an asymmetrical trochanter on the femur. You're going to find a reverse crocodile ankle arrangement, a sensacrum, which is where the ribs fuse into the pelvic bone. And like the doctor was saying, you're going to find an open acetabulum where the femur joint fits in. It's a ring of bone instead of being a closed cup. Now here's the thing. If you dig up an ostrich, if you dig up a penguin or a bluebird, whatever, you're going to find all of those diagnostic, the characteristics that say this is a dinosaur. Birds have every one of them. Show me a bird that does not have any of the defining characteristics that we use to define and distinguish dinosaurs from non-dinosaurs. Think of one bird.
Okay, this is a good
Exactly.
challenge for me to look up for the next time after I answer.
You won't find a bird. And as far as the feather thing goes, we have microscopes that we even know what color some of those feathers are because of.
I actually got a good video for you. Yeah, I got a great video for you of an expert on this area actually showing the differences of birds and dinosaurs.
Of
Yeah.
course, what I'm
fossils.
saying is birds are in the clade of dinosaur. Not every dinosaur is a bird, but
That's
all
not proof of evolution, though.
birds are in the clade of Dinosauria.
Well, there is a bird expert who very strongly disagrees with you. His name is Alan Fiducia. Are you
Right.
familiar with him?
I've heard the name, but
Okay. And he's an evolutionist, so he doesn't have a creationist agenda,
right.
but he
But here's
talks
the-
about the differences in the anatomy of birds and dinosaurs, and he's been basically blacklisted for it because it doesn't go along with the evolutionary story that's trying to be
Right.
told at the time.
Well, here's the
right
thing.
now,
I
so-
don't really care or concerned about what one particular individual says. I'm looking at the broad spectrum of evidence.
That's not scientific.
Whatever. So I'm looking at the broad spectrum of evidence. Now, you can challenge the evidence, right? And say, well, I challenge this and that. But if you do, you better bring it. You better have you better be bringing the evidence, and it better be solid. And I'm not talking. And if you want to believe that God created birds and so forth, then you're going to fine. But it does not take away that birds, they're although very different from a lot of the other dinosaurs.
Let me summarize.
Wait, hold on,
still
Junior. I want to
contain-
respond to him after
They
he's
still
done.
contain and as far as the teeth go, that we find in like Hesperornis or Archaeopteryx, those teeth are thichodont teeth, right? As are dinosaurs. So, and birds have the genes to grow teeth. If you may have heard the term as rare as a hen's tooth. And we've even in the lab had chickens with that. All you got to do is suppress the enzyme during embryo when it's in embryo. I can't think of the word. Excuse me. They suppress the enzyme and the birds grow teeth, right? So the genes are there, and those genes are there for a reason. So
Okay. But the whole thing is, it does not actually matter. This actually does not provide evidence for evolution. So let's just say I look this up and it turns out that you're right. Birds are dinosaurs. No problem. Now, that all we're doing is categorizing animals. Okay. But what you need to demonstrate, I'm asking for evidence for evolution. Where is the evidence that all creatures came from a common ancestor, that all of life developed from a common ancestor? What is the evidence for that?
you're going to have to look into the genetics, into the constrained and non-constrained for more recent and the constrained areas of the genome.
After I'll respond.
Did you want to respond, Junior?
I don't know.
Okay,
You finish.
because-
You finish
yeah.
first. I'll respond.
So,
So hold on, let me ask this question. If it's not one, then how many animals we started with?
No. Let's focus on this.
I don't
here
know how
first.
many animals we started
Many
with,
questions.
but my story that I believe is not in question here. I'm challenging your story because your story is being passed off as if it's science, but it's really just a story that you're telling.
Right, but we don't know how many animals. So why not be one? Why be 10? Why be 20? Why? You know, the implication is your story. If it's not this, then it's your story. But looking at the Instead, we should like look at the evidence and then draw a conclusion instead of
I agree.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No. Sorry. You just real quick. Yeah. So just to summarize, sorry, what's your name, Mister with the black jacket?
Oh, black jacket. I don't know.
What's your name, Mister with the black top?
Are you
It
talking to
says
me?
Mirza. Here, let me put the names on the screen. Go ahead.
Because I can't actually see the names.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll change that. Just continue on with what you wanted to say.
Yeah. So basically, you need to understand the similarities is not something that absolutely proves evolution. Similarities in bone structure, because similarities, we're gonna see similarities everywhere. Everything has a certain percentage of similarities. Thank you, Rebecca. Tyler, Mr. Tyler, yes.
Right.
So
Are you telling me that these are not derived cinema?
Exactly, because you need to realize, Mr. Tyler, that everything you just said, we can just say, yes, the creator has created kinds with certain similarities, with varying degrees of similarities, it shows his creative power. It is not proof of evolution to say that just because something looks similar to another, you know what I mean? But I agree with what Mr.
I'm sorry, it seems to me you're
said.
thinking backwards. You're saying, if there's a creator, could there be similarities? The question is, if there are similarities, what's the most likely explanation? But I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Yeah, sorry. No, but I agree with you, Mr. Miss, that we need to look at the observable evidence, not guess fantasy stories like, I evolved from this and that. We need to look at the observable evidence. And when we do that, we find that mutations are fast. And we have discovered recently now that basically all animals of the animal kingdom had a bottleneck at the exact same time. Evolution has nothing to explain this, because mutations are observed to be very fast in the mitochondria. I will link this paper after 2018.
What do you mean by bottleneck? Like a mass extinction event, or?
Yes, near
So
extinction.
there's several, right?
Near extinction event.
So there are many in evolutionary theory. There's like
wait. What's a near extinction bottleneck event? Only a few kinds of animal of the entire species survive a catastrophe. Only a few, 2 or whatever, 3, 4. That's a genetic bottleneck. And by looking at the amount of mutation accumulation between kinds of animals, it has been discovered that the diversity is very low. Within kinds, 0.1%. Between kinds, doesn't even reach 10% in the COI region of the mitochondria, basically. So that tells us, okay, not a lot of time has passed, because, we know mutations are fast. And by the way, natural selection, none of these work. I can explain why none of these work, because mutations are happening at the same time. So using natural selection to explain this is not going to work. People have tried. I will get into that. I just said right now why it doesn't work, but I will get into that in more detail. But anyway, it is being empirically verified now. So all animals have a genetic bottleneck.
The mutation rate and the fixation rate are two different things.
No, they are not.
Mutations may happen.
No. Think with me. You have an original organism, right? Original organism. With time, the organism is going to branch off. Mutations between everyone is being accumulated at the same time. You know what I mean when I say, of course, I don't mean the exact number of mutations per generation. I don't mean that. But, the fixation rate will be very similar to the pedigree rates that we observe today, because mutations are accumulating between all trees at the same time. So if you have all trees dying, doesn't matter, because your neighbor has around the same number of mutations that you had when you died. So fixation and mutation rate, they basically the same thing.
No,
not all mutations are beneficial, right?
Yes.
They're going to be selected. Only beneficial is going to be selected. If you have mutation that makes you sterile, that's not going to show up in evolutionary tree, for example, right? If you have a mutation that makes you easy meal, that you're not going to have any offspring. Also, there some things go faster, some things go slower. Just like in today's computers are changing very fast, but shovels are the same, right? for hundreds of years. Same thing with animals. There are some animals that have been successful for millions of years, and some that are so there's no. It's not like one rate by which things are changing. It doesn't have to be that way.
Completely agree with you, and that's why we're looking at the empirical evidence. And by the way, in the past, you cannot say that in the past it was magnitudes of order of magnitude slower. No, that's not how mutation chemistry work. You need
But
to
selection does.
So no, that's
Selection and environmental pressures do. Yeah. If there's a big environmental change, that will speed up evolution. If things stays relatively the same for a long period of time, then whatever
yes,
is. Yeah, right. Go ahead.
No, but what I'm talking about is the rate of mutation in the mitochondria. You're not gonna go from one mutation every 14 generations to one mutation every 400 generations. That's not how it works. Doesn't matter if you change the location where you live. Adaptation doesn't matter. It's never gonna mutate that slow because
So
that's not how.
Mutation and survival are not the same thing. You can mutate fast, but only the fittest survive, right? So if something works, any mutation from that's suboptimal, that will die out, and only the working branch will keep going. So you're looking. That's a survivorship bias, basically. That's a survivorship bias. You're looking at the survivors and saying, "Oh well, nothing changed." Well, that's because things that changed are not here to look at.
And I think when you're talking about the mitochondrial DNA, you're thinking of that paper that was written back in the 90s.
No, it's not. It's not the 90s.
Okay.
2018. Took 10 years to finish.
Okay. When they talk about the mitochondrial DNA, it's only passed on by the mother. So any mutations that you have in the male doesn't matter because they're not going to be passed on. So they try to make this mutation rate seem larger or faster because they're counting in the males into the fixations. It's only the females that pass that along.
No, pedigree studies in the mitochondria are done only by female to mother to child. It's very rare. I believe there are cases of males passing on, but it's super rare for male to pass on. Very, very rare.
I've never heard of that. I mean, I inherited my mitochondrial DNA from my mother. My children have my wife's mitochondrial DNA.
Exactly.
So any mutations that I have end with me. Understood?
Exactly. But yeah, just coming back to Misa real quick. Sorry, is that your name? Misa?
Yes.
So mutation. Look, mutation. Every single lineage are accumulating mutations around the same number of mutations throughout history, because you can't just say that mutations are super duper slow. That's not how the chemistry on the mitochondria doesn't work like that. So throughout history, every single lineage is going to have around the same number of mutations anyway. So it doesn't matter who died or who survived, doesn't matter. We can confidently say that mutations are fast because of this reason, because the fixation rate approaches the pedigree rate, because that's how mutations work. So you can't just say, "Oh, we're just looking at the one that survived," and that's no.
Yes, that's the whole survival of the fittest. I don't know what you mean. You seem to think that there's these mutations that get passed on from generation to generation. Why would it be that way? The whole point of natural selection is the selection part. It selects for beneficial traits, not for everything.
In the mutations that happen in the non-constrained areas of the genome, it doesn't really matter. Things can mutate. Entire chunks of DNA can be it doesn't matter.
I understand.
It's the constrained area that matters. You change a little part in some of these constrained areas, and it has a detrimental effect. Those do not get passed on because it is detrimental.
Now, what I have done is look at many papers where they do a pedigree study in the entire mitochondria. So it's not just a little bit here, a little bit there, the entire mitochondria to see the mutation rate. I took all the best papers that look at the whole thing, and the mutation rate is insanely fast. One mutation every 14, might be even faster than that, mind you, in the mitochondria. The more data we have coming in, and it's amazing how it lands on the 6,600 something years when you do the calculations empirically. And no, you can't say mutations were slower in the past because, like I said, everyone's accumulating mutation. Everyone throughout history is going to have about the same number of mutations anyway, so it doesn't matter.
We don't know that they were slow in the past, though. We just
No one's saying that. I don't know why.
In the past, there wouldn't be more in the past, no, because obviously mutation accumulates with time. So of course, when you go back in the past, it's going to be less mutation. That's not what I'm saying.
How would you know? How would you know, though? Right? How would you know what mutation rate was in the past? All that information is lost. We only have today's DNA.
No, see, now you have to appeal to a mutation that is orders of magnitude slower. You think that's realistic? You think that's?
I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was. Yeah, I don't know what the mutation rate was. In fact, it seems like we got lost in this detail because we can compare like DNA across species and we can notice similarities, and that's how we concluded that all life has common ancestor, right? So, but then you like, well, the mutation rate. It's like the whole moon landing hoax when people say, how did the astronauts move their fingers in a glove due to pressure, or how they survive? These are very complicated questions that have very specific answers.
Sorry, Rebecca.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
The thing is, when you have any sufficiently difficult subject, you can always nitpick and say, how did this happen? How did that happen? But if you look at the big picture, if you look at the big picture, if you look at the fossils, if you look at how animals look, if you look at the genetic code, the evolution is really the best explanation we have so far. Now, if you have a better explanation with a better explanatory power, that's great. Let's hear it. Now, saying God made it, that doesn't really explain it. That doesn't really say how it's made.
Now, Mirza, you're bringing up a point, and we're getting to the heart of why you're seeing something as evidence that I don't count as evidence at all. Okay? So you're looking at similarities, and you're saying this is evidence of a common ancestor. Okay? Now, why is it that you see those similarities and you say there's a common ancestor? Why do I look at those similarities and I don't see that as evidence for a common ancestor? And I'll tell you why. It's because, I mean, are you disagreeing with what I'm saying right now?
Yes. I look at the evidence and I say the common ancestor seems to be the most likely explanation. I'm not saying common ancestor is true and this evidence confirms it. I'm saying this is the evidence and the best explanation I can come up with is common ancestor, right? Does that make sense? Now, if you can come up with better, if you can come up with better explanation other than, well, you cannot really explain everything with this, then I'm willing to listen. But you can always find flaws. Like I said, it's very complicated process over billions of years involving science beyond human understanding.
Yeah, and so now this is why, like, we're getting to the heart of it, because you're saying if there's a better explanation, okay?
Yes.
And as far as I can tell, what you're doing is you're comparing the similarities, and you're saying you're comparing it to other ideas about how things come about by natural processes, meaning you are limiting yourself to explanations that are naturalistic. Am I right about that?
If there can be an explanation that explains how something is done and that can be tested with a prediction that's testable and falsifiable, then that would be preferable. If you can come up with something like that contrary to evolution, I would listen to that. Yeah.
Here's the thing, Rebecca. When you say, well, it was a designer or what have you, what you're telling us is that which we cannot observe, study, test, quantify, and measure has more explanatory power than that which we can observe, study, test, quantify, and measure. And we're just not buying it.
Okay, well, and that's the thing is, now, look, there is a point that science can't go beyond, right? So we're limited in science to our observations, right, of the world
Correct.
and the universe. Okay. So, but we don't have to be limited in the explanations. Like, what I mean is, we don't have to unnecessarily limit ourselves to naturalistic explanations. So if you open up the possibility of other explanations, then you are more free to follow the evidence where it leads.
I'd like
Okay.
to respond to that.
Okay.
So I haven't talked in a while. So about two things that were brought up. First, about miracles. If you allow for miracles in science, science stops. Because as soon as you say, why do the planets go around the sun? Well, it's a miracle. Why does DNA code for our bodies? It's a miracle. And there's no investigation. The only way you can progress in science is to look for a natural explanation that does not require a miracle. When you start allowing for miracles, the science itself stops.
Okay.
And the second point I want to bring up is what was brought up by one of you. I can't remember which one, about a testable hypothesis. Creationism is not a testable hypothesis where evolution is. There are absolutely observations that, if we made them, would falsify evolution.
Okay.
And evolution has made successful predictions, and creationism, as far as I know, has not. And so that's why evolution is science and creationism is religion. I'll give you just one example of a prediction. So when DNA analysis started, it was predicted that of all the invertebrate classes, all the invertebrate phyla, that echinoderms would be most closely related to vertebrate, or to chordates. And then with DNA analysis, we found out that they are the most closely related in terms of their DNA architecture. Now, that was a prediction made of science, of evolution, and it was an unexpected prediction. Nobody could have predicted it without the evolutionary idea, and it turned out to be true. And evolution has made other predictions that turned out to be true.
Okay, later I'm going to debunk that by showing the opposite of what you just said. By providing the paper that debunks what you just said.
You're interrupting me. Creationism is incapable of making testable hypotheses, because if creationism made a testable hypothesis and it came out false, you would have to reject it. And I don't think there's any data that would force you to reject it.
Okay, you made a few points. I'm going to respond now. Unfortunately, you are showing a bit of dishonesty. The more you speak on this topic, you clearly haven't come prepared. Anyway, number one, Dr. Hassel Humphreys.
Say that.
Okay, sure.
I'm not dishonest. I may be wrong and I may make a mistake, but I'm not dishonest, and you shouldn't call me that.
Okay, I will grant you that perhaps you don't know, and therefore you speaking that you don't know.
In fact, religion could have testable hypotheses.
Wait,
hold on one second. The Bible said,
Wait,
there were
hold on.
dinosaurs.
Junior is responding to what Howard said. Let's give him a chance.
But I just wanted to add on to his point. Okay, I'm sorry.
Anyway, so Dr. Hassel Humphreys correctly predicted the magnetic field force of two planets before discovered. His secular colleagues that believes in billions of years were way off, and Dr. Humphreys is a creationist and believes things were created about 6,000 years old. Correctly predicted the magnetic field force. Number one. Number two, many other predictions. It was us creationists that predicted similarities in how the DNA structure should be between creatures, because we believe a designer created, not evolution. So that's false as well. I'm going to show you later. And anyway, creation predicted very low variation in mutation, because we know it comes from Adam and Eve about only 6,000 years ago. Lo and behold, we are very low diversity in our DNA. All humans in the mitochondria, diversity of only 0.1%, and the same thing in the Y chromosome. Evolution expect way more diversity and saturation, because obviously, billions of years and such from the single cell organism. It just goes on and on.
I'd like to respond to just
absolute chunk that evolution predicted and got it wrong.
I'd like to respond to 2 points of that. First of all, some of the things you said I just am not familiar with, but in terms of predicting the similarity of DNA, can you show me that prediction was made before the DNA analysis was done? or after. If it's after, it's not a prediction. And I think, I'm very familiar with this argument, and it was made after. Regarding the decay of the magnetic field, we've talked about that before. We know from the history of paleomagnetics that the Earth's magnetic field has strengthened and decayed many, many times. And so this is not a successful prediction of creationism, because
It is a success prediction, yeah, because it's the magnetic field force based on 6,000 years old of decay, and you got it correctly. His secular friend believed there would be no magnetic field in there because they believe in billions of years. So they thought the Neptune and Pluto, which was the planets that was about to get discovered, right? The magnetic field force. They thought there was none left because, such a long time had passed, in the secular model. But no, it's still there. Just think about yeah, you're right, Doctor. We talked about this before.
Earth's magnetic field has been around for billions of years, and it has not decayed. It is going through cycles. We know that from the rock record. It is not in dispute.
No, that's completely false. You really haven't looked into that. Please look into that. I urge you. There's no mechanism to actually recharge it to last that long. It has been measured.
Scientists are human. Scientists are human. They're going to make mistakes and mistaken prediction. That's what humans are. You would not expect that from God and religion, but of course they're going to make mistakes.
No,
I'd like to respond.
You just repeat the same fallacies over and over about God. Forget about that for a second. Focus on the evidence here at hand, please.
I'm
sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'd like to respond to what Junior said. This idea, this statement that there's no known mechanism is one of the things Rebecca brought up early on, and it doesn't work because we know lots of things. You're interrupting me. We know lots of examples in the history of science where people said there's no known mechanism for something to happen, and yet we still know it happened, and the mechanism was discovered later. We know from successive lava flows that the Earth's magnetic field has, for a fact, reversed, strengthened, weakened, reversed, strengthened, weakened. These cycles are not in question. The evidence is clear-cut. Anybody can collect it. And there is no alternate explanation. The fact that we don't have a mechanism that explains how the Earth's dynamo works doesn't negate the fact that it has weakened and strengthened repeatedly in the past. It's, I don't know how many times have been recorded, but it's probably hundreds. And so there is no doubt that this has happened, even if we don't have a mechanism to explain it.
Reversals does not mean recharging, full recharge.
Yes,
and that's what I wanted to ask about that. Are the reversals, because what is it about the reversals that give evidence? Just to be clear, all of our actual observations of the magnetic field for the last more than 100 years, it is decaying. We've never seen it strengthen. So right now our observations show that it's decaying. And so when we're looking at I'm aware that we can see the evidence of the reversals and that but what is the evidence that actually that's connected to a process that would renew the magnetic field?
Well, first of all, you're asking two different things. One is the evidence of strengthening, weakening, and reversals, and the other is the process. The process is not well understood. And when we look at successive lava flows, and people look very carefully at as closely spaced samples as they can show that the Earth's magnetic field does weaken, reverse, and then strengthen again. This is known, and it's been.
What is the evidence that it strengthens again?
Well,
what do they see that shows them it strengthens again?
The evidence comes from looking at how strongly magnetized the rocks are, and so the stronger the field is, the more strongly preserved the magnetic field in the rocks are. And they've even been able to now get it in sediments, so they can actually look at the magnetic field in sediments and sample it kind of very finely. I don't know what it's been years since I worked on this. And so they can actually see the magnetic field weakening, reverse, and strengthening again. So we know this has happened in the past. So the fact that it's weakening today, I don't doubt it. I haven't looked into it, but I don't doubt it. But it doesn't mean anything about creationism because we know this has happened dozens, if not hundreds of times in the past. And we don't know what the mechanism is, but this is another example where saying we don't have a mechanism is irrelevant. and it's always
Okay.
irrelevant.
But
I also feel like
there
we
has
kind of
to
got
be
lost
a
in magnetic
positive.
field, right? We kind of got lost. This is so far from evolution.
Yeah,
or
this
anything.
is far from the topic. You're right. We'll bring it back, but I just want to say this in response to we don't have a mechanism. But if you're going to believe something without a mechanism, you should have very strong evidence. And right now, you guys are not really providing strong evidence for evolution. You're not actually providing evidence at all.
Well, the
How are you
evidence,
defining
I'm waiting to
evolution?
hear evidence for evolution.
the evidence I was talking about with the magnetic field was in direct response to what Junior brought up.
Right, I know.
He
But
brought it.
I'm just saying,
And I can show you the graphs. It's not strength. Sorry, Rebecca. Sorry.
I'm just
No.
saying, with regard to, we can go ahead and believe in evolution without a mechanism. Go ahead and believe evolution. That's your story.
No.
That's
No,
your
no.
story.
Also,
but it's
I
a
can bring another
story you
argument to
believe.
prove that.
It doesn't have evidence backing it up. So if you want to walk around and say, that's science,
That's
well,
backwards,
then
though. That's
that
not
is-
science. That's
you
backwards.
need to show
I'm
that
not
it's actually
saying.
science.
No, I'm not saying. Okay, this here's evolution, and therefore we have evidence. I'm saying here's the evidence, and therefore evolution is the best explanation. Now, if you can come up with better explanation, I'm all ears. But this is the best explanation given evidence. You're thinking backwards. You start from a conclusion and looking for proof instead of studying from data and then finding what fits best given what we know.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll
you've
respond.
tied my hands behind my back, Mirza,
Look,
because
evolution-
you only
That's the thing.
allow. No, listen, please do not interrupt. Guys, we can't
Right.
have a conversation with 5 people if everybody's just going to
Okay, I'm
interrupt.
sorry,
I
yeah.
know I've done it too, but like,
Right.
let's try. So, but Mirza, you're tying my hands behind my back because you only allow naturalistic explanations, which means you have to believe a naturalistic explanation, no matter how ridiculous it is. And evolution is a ridiculous idea. It's been falsified many times over by our scientific observations, but you're right to say it's the best we've got of naturalistic explanations. So if you can only have naturalistic explanations, then okay, evolution.
Well, we don't. Hold on.
Evolution.
Let me answer that.
Let me
answer
just
that.
say, evolution, as defined, is the
No,
variation
let me just answer
of
that.
allele
We only-
frequency in
Hold on 1 second.
population.
Let me, because it was directed to me. Let me just answer that. I am not tying your hands. That's what we have access to. We only have access to this knowledge. We have no access to other knowledge. Anything else is a pure speculation. I mean, why not Allah? Why not magical fairies? Why not Matrix? You can formulate all kinds of theories, but only things we can know are things we can observe and deduce. Anything else is just wishful thinking. These are not my rules. It's just reality.
Okay, I'll respond to that. Okay.
Tyler
Miss,
wanted to respond really quick. Tyler was waiting
Right.
to talk, then Junior. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Evolution, as defined, is the variation of allele frequencies in populations by means of herited descent. What part of that are you saying is false? Are you saying alleles don't exist? That we
No,
cannot
I
observe
agree
them?
with that.
Okay,
I
so are
have
you
no
saying they
problem
don't-
with
they
that
don't change
definition of
frequency?
evolution. But evolution, what I mean when I say evolution is what you guys actually, the point you want to get to, which is
By definition, evolution happens. Alleles change frequency in population by means of herited descent. So you're going to have to figure out a way to word it better and you are counting heavily upon that happening to explain all the different species that we see after Noah got off the ark and brought the animals to account for the millions of species.
Oh, we absolutely.
Now we're just
You are
playing with
counting heavily
definite.
on
Hold
that
on.
being true.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but I want to respond to this thing before you go on about animals and such. I want to respond to I don't want to play around with definitions, okay? Because that's all you're doing with that allele frequencies.
I agree.
I agree that exists, okay? But what you're doing is that's what you're saying evolution is. So you need a different word then for what you really believe, which is the diversification of life from a common ancestor by natural processes. So what is your word used for that? And I'll use that word instead.
That is what evolution. That's how evolution happens.
Okay, that's
means of
the
heritage descent.
definition of evolution that I'm challenging. I'm not challenging allele frequencies in populations changing over time. I'm not challenging that. I'm challenging the definition of evolution that life diversified from a common ancestor by natural processes.
Okay, so if you're gonna have your own definition that's not in accordance with every textbook on the planet, we can do that. We can do that.
So wait, you don't believe that so you don't believe life diversified from a common ancestor by natural processes?
Yes. But
you do believe it. Then what's the word you use for that? And I'll use your word.
That's not the definition. But if, like I said, okay, go to the constrained areas of the genome, and you can, and that's where you can even see where prokaryotes and eukaryotes, how eukaryotes came about from prokaryotes. Now, if this DNA is not passed along, then explain it some other way. But that's how it works. Now, if we have created kinds, which would be a clade that has no association, no relationship with any other clade, then we should not see these nested hierarchies in the genome. But we do, and that's an evolutionary prediction, and it's not a creationist.
Okay, I'm hearing a lot of arguments. I'm sorry, guys. It's kind of weak. It's kind of weak because it's.
I'm not interested in your opinion, Junior. Give it. Just tell
me. But
you
you're giving me your opinion and your definitions, and I'm saying they're weak. You give me your opinions, and I'm saying they're weak. So, okay.
Give me a better one. Give me a better one.
May I present a better one? May I present a better one? May I present a better one?
Yeah.
I'm going to present a better one right now. Okay.
Please do.
Not interested in clades or whatever. It's not going to prove evolution. Instead, let's look at the things that survive, that supposedly survive for millions of years. And we know from observation science, they can also survive millions of years, like DNA. Like DNA in dinosaur fossils that has been proved they cannot survive for not even 20,000 years under 20 degrees Celsius. And let's agree that 20 C would probably, kind of the average, temperature around that time. It's not going to be too cold, right? It's not going to be too hot either. So 20 C is a good one for average, right? I will provide the papers after. We have measured the decay rate for DNA, ancient DNA in general, right? And we find out that DNA will not survive. It's all going to break up in 20,000 years in the average temperature. And we find dinosaur DNA
in fossils or in living things?
In dinosaur fossils, yes, in dinosaur fossils.
Dinosaur
I don't think we found any.
Yes, we have. There's an entire list that ICR keeps on bioorganic material found in dinosaur fossils, and also the fact that
you're also not giving an explanation. Give me a better explanation. Now, not the problem with my explanation. Give me your explanation of these things.
I know I'm falsifying your explanation.
No, but you said you have a better.
Years old.
You said you have a better explanation. What is it?
Yeah, I'm explaining right now why your explanation is weak, and therefore
no. Tell me what yours is.
Okay, well, let me finish the explanation. Let me finish. I was talking about DNA, and we have observed it doesn't last that long, DNA, and people will say, okay, it's DNA from bacteria. No, it's not from bacteria, because the way we found the DNA was like very curled in a nucleus, and bacteria doesn't have a nucleus. Therefore, even Mary Schweitzer agrees that it's actually dinosaur DNA, and no, it doesn't survive more than 20,000 years. Of course, now, sure, because the fact that it doesn't survive more than 20,000 years, of course, it's gonna fit within a young Earth, right? Because 20,000 is the max limit. I'm not saying that, you know what I mean? I'm not saying that the things are 20,000 years old. That's just a max limit for how DNA survives. So of course it fits within a young Earth model. The fact that we still find DNA in the.
So how old is the Earth then?
Well, based on
6,000 years.
Based on all fields, doesn't matter where you look. History, based on all fields, is consistent within the biblical history. Yes. We can talk about so many things. Why radiocarbon dating is
how many? Just give me a number. Just give me a number.
I would say about 6,000 to 7,000, yeah. And then you can talk about anything.
Well,
So
I'd like to
hold on.
respond to that.
So snow falls in Arctic every year, right? So you can see layers. So if we drill down the snow core, we should not see more than 6,000 layers, right?
I will debunk that by providing a link where people have found planes and they discovered the planes were buried in there like 50 years or something, and there was like hundreds of layers,
And those
meaning that
planes
No,
were
I
meaning
on
don't
that
the
know.
ice
coast.
layers,
You do
meaning
not
that
Every
get
ice
ice
layers.
samples from the coast. Those
Excuse me,
places where the
I haven't finished.
weather is temperate, you have warm air coming in, you have cold, and you go to the center into the area where the weather is more stable. That's where you get ice core samples. You never get them on the coast. That's where those planes landed.
Yeah, I'd like to
What else you
respond.
got?
I'd like
They
to
How
they
can
have
Junior,
many
can I respond
layers
to you,
of
please?
ice have been formed in there. Yes, that's what the
Junior,
people
can I
that went there
respond to you,
report.
please? You've made several geologic points, and this is my area of expertise. I'm a professional geologist.
I know you
First
are,
of all,
doctor, but I know you are, but let me conclude real
no,
quick.
let me.
These are
You made several
observation.
points. I'd like to respond to them.
I'm concluding right now. I'm not making a new point. I'm concluding
Okay.
right now. This is an observation they did, and yes, they proved that many ice layers are formed within a year. So each layer of ice doesn't mean a single year. It can be formed many layers at the same time because we know the age that those planes sank, and we know how many layers was there to get to the
I
planes.
just
So
told you.
using
Can
that
I,
as an
can I
argument for
respond now? Can I respond to
using
that?
that for respond,
This is-
please. Respond, please.
Okay. First, I'm going to talk about three things. First is the ice layers. So regarding the ice layers, what Tyler said is absolutely true. When you look at a precipitation map, the average precipitation where the planes were stranded was near the coast. The average annual precipitation is 1 to 2 meters. When you look at the area where the ice cores were taken, the average precipitation is about that much. And so the ice cores do contain annual laminations. We know this because there are datable layers in the ice cores, such as the atmospheric nuclear tests from the 50s and 60s, and even going back to volcanic eruptions a lot longer ago than that. So you can prove that the laminations in the ice cores down to the limit of where you can date it are annual. And what you said about laminations where the planes went down isn't true. When you look at the photographs of the ice, there are no laminations. It's just solid ice. And
it's not just that. Yeah.
let me finish. The burial of the plains is absolutely consistent with modern observable precipitation rates of snow. And so the plains do not in any way contradict the ice core layers.
I'm not.
That's the first
No,
thing.
you misunderstood me.
Well, I'm telling you, you can date the ice core layers by the radiometric fallout from atmospheric tests from 50 to 60 years ago. And there is one layer per year. And this is not a question. This is
what radiometric
let me
dating
go
tells
on.
you.
You made several points without me interrupting. Now I want to make several points.
Okay, but that doesn't work.
As far as geology goes, since you brought it up, I know Rebecca doesn't like talking about the age of the earth, but since you brought it up, I'm going to talk about it. There is lots of geologic evidence that the earth cannot possibly be young. This evidence includes soils that we see in the ancient. It's not just that soils exist. It's the range of soil types matches the range of soil types.
No. The compaction rate is wrong. The compaction rate is wrong.
You're interrupting me again, and I didn't interrupt you.
Sorry, go on.
So it has nothing to do with compaction. It has everything to do with soils. We see soils in the Jurassic, in the Cretaceous, in all the different ages.
I will respond later.
We see soils, and they are the range of soils we see matches the range of soils that we find forming today. And some of these soils we know from historic records take over 1,000 years to form, and we see hundreds of them in the rock record. The other thing we see is river valleys embedded in the rock record, which cannot form in just a year or two. The other thing we see are tidal cycles in the rock record, and there's one outcrop in Kentucky that has over 200 years of tidal cycles preserved in a single outcrop, and that's at the top of the geologic column in Kentucky. The other thing we see are coral reefs. There's no way a coral reef can grow to 1,000 feet high in less than a year. It can't. And
You
yet
use uniformitarian assumptions again, just like you did with the equilibrium aesthetic. It
it's
doesn't.
not a uniformitarian assumption
It
because
is a uniformitarian assumption
let
because
me finish.
Not just that, we can also see Andromeda Galaxy takes 2 million years for light to come to us. How is
we
that
can talk
possible?
about light later, Mister. Let's
Yeah,
focus
but
on
there's
this.
so many signs, economical, biological, biological.
One topic. We're talking about
Let
geology.
Dr. Howard finish.
And so, for example, if you have the corals growing too fast, it absorbs so much calcium carbonate from the water that the energy requirements become impossible. It has to grow slowly. There's kinematic limits on how fast these coral reefs can grow. And so it's not a uniformitarian assumption. It's a limit of chemistry. You just simply can't do it. And so there are multiple lines of evidence that the Earth cannot possibly be under 10,000 years old. It's not just one line of evidence. And you just focus on the evidence for rapid deposition, which is all perfectly true. It's just that you ignore all the evidence for slow deposition.
Okay. Yeah, let's go one by one. I'm going to show why it all fits. So about the ice cores, I'm not challenging the dating or anything like that, although I will challenge the radiometric dating portion of it, because if we do observe with our own eyes, forget about radiometric dating, if we observe it with our own eyes, that in 50 years, hundreds more ice layers will form, not just 50 layers don't represent annual, it does not represent one layer for each year based on our eyes. Forget about radiometric dating.
Where has this been published? 50 layers in 1 year. Where has that been published?
Well, that's because people will say each layer represents a single year, and that's completely false.
Prove it. As I said, we can prove it.
Doesn't matter.
Dating.
I'm talking about observation with our eyes. Forget about radiometric dating.
I'm not talking about. I have not once mentioned radiometric dating. I've mentioned radiometric fallout from atom bombs that were exploded in the atmosphere in the 50s. We know what dates they were exploded. We can find those fallout layers.
I understand.
Ice cores.
I understand.
And you count the number of layers till today, and it's one per year. So we can.
That's false. But that's the very thing I just showed you, that layers are not annual layers. That's literally.
No, you haven't shown me. You haven't shown me a single bit of evidence. Tell me where I can find this evidence.
Sure. I will. By the way, every time we talk about something, Doctor, I always provide the link in the Rebecca's video below. So after you check it, and I will provide the link for that. So I will remember of that. Anyway, second point. Yes, oil and coal from Pete has been.
I never mentioned oil and coal. I never mentioned that. You're changing the subject.
You said that was something against the young Earth.
I said soils. I talked about soils.
No, but look, how many benefits does soil have for plants?
What's that have to do with it? I'm talking about the time it takes to form soils, and that the soils are embedded in the rock record.
Okay, I would like to get back on track, because we are way off in young Earthland, and the point of this stream
soil is just dirt
for evidence for evolution. So far, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but so far no evidence has been given for evolution.
Okay. I disagree.
If evidence has been given, then let me know.
Yes, I said that the prediction that echinoderms would be closely related to chordates, and that was made by evolution. It was found to be true. So that's a testable hypothesis.
Okay.
Also, the point was that the evolution is the best explanation, and then I challenged somebody to give a better explanation, and nobody has yet. That's the thing. There's no better explanation that we have so far, and you can say 6,000 years old, and then we can show all these holes. But the point is,
there's
no better explanation yet.
Okay, can I
naturalistic explanation, because you're only allowing naturalistic explanations.
No, I'm not. I'm allowing. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, the better explanation, and Junior, I'm gonna let Wesley and Sal talk next. But the better explanation that I'm offering you is that life has a designer. I can't, from scientific observations, show you who that designer is. You're right. It could be fairies. It could be any number of gods. Okay, I can't show you that from our scientific observations, but what I can show you from our scientific observations is that life has a designer. The universe is orderly. Everything points to there being some type of creative intellect.
How did the designer make things?
that also is something I can't tell you with scientific observations. Okay.
So that's not an explanation.
It's not a science stopper. It's just that there are limits to our understanding. It's not that we can't pursue an explanation on that. Okay, but you have to decide whether or not you're going to open up your field of vision, because right now, if you're limited to naturalistic explanations, then I can't do any better for you than evolution. But I think you're believing a ridiculous idea that's been falsified many times over.
Explanation has to explain things. That right. So when you're saying designer made it, and I ask how, then there's no explanation. That's not an explanation. That's an assertion. Right.
Well, I'm saying we can look at the observation. We can look at the properties of life, and we can say, okay, there's, this has the properties of being designed. And I want to
what does, for example, why do men have nipples? We don't need nipples, right?
Okay.
Why,
these are questions about what the creator would do, okay? And why I have, these are all theological questions, but we're supposed to be talking about science. Let's let Wesley chime in and say what he wants to say, and then Sal. Go ahead, Wesley.
Hi, how you doing, Rebecca?
Great, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, God bless everyone here. And as far as the conversation about, I guess we're going in the direction of naturalism, right? Are you saying methodologically we can't know anything outside of nature, Misra? Is that what it is?
Right. I mean, I'm saying is we only have access to what we have access to. Right. If you can have something that gives predictions and can be tested. In fact, religion can give predictions and can be tested. So I'll give you an example. If Bible said, I don't know, humans have 46 chromosomes, and then we discovered, wow, indeed, humans have 46 chromosomes. That would have been a testable prediction. If Bible had said, dinosaurs lived 65 million years ago and a giant meteor killed them, that would be a testable prediction. Also, if we zoomed in on a cell and clearly on the top of the cell it says Jesus is the Lord, yeah, that would be something. Or if we looked at with the Hubble Space Telescope and we saw God sitting on his throne, that would be something. So you can actually, supernatural actually can give predictions. It's just not have so far been proven, I guess. And stuff that is in the Bible, we know can't happen. We know the world was not created in 6 days. We know plants did not exist before the sun. We know, we know that Earth is round, that there's no dome with water above us. So yeah, I mean, but go ahead. I'm rambling.
Yes, you are.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I guess I'm going back to. So I guess in that case, you're saying you can test the supernatural.
Right. If there's a test for prediction, you can test it, sure.
Okay. And then I guess our side would just say that we've tested positive for intelligent design, right?
How?
For instance, by virtue of genetic code and DNA.
But that shows that common ancestry, not 6-day creation.
But all codes are designed. That's an inference.
No.
And actually, that's our observations. Our observation is that no codes come about by natural processes. We've never seen a code come about by natural processes.
Except this one, right?
No, that's an assumption. And that's we're trying to figure out where do codes come from. Hold on. When we're trying to figure out where do codes come from and where did the DNA code come from, we have to start without an assumption about that, right? And so how can we test that? We look at we can make observations. Right now, we could do an experiment to find out if a code could assimilate by natural processes. And based on our previous observations, we would see that codes do not come about by natural processes. Until someone can show that, there's no reason to believe that DNA comes about by natural processes.
Also, nobody has ever seen a designer. Same thing. Right?
Well, that's actually not true. We've seen designers make codes. agents make codes all the
In
time.
somebody, you've seen somebody make universe. You've seen
Well, we're not
somebody
talking about the
design
universe. We're talking about code.
Well, no. You're mixing categories. Code is not. You're calling DNA code, but it's not a human code. It's not a computer code. It's
a code, though. It's a code. It says it's if it isn't a code, there's no such thing as a code. It is a code. We could sit and take any book off. I could take this book off my shelf and put it into DNA code, rewrite it in DNA code. DNA is a code, and it's the most exquisite code we've ever encountered. So it is a code. So what you're believing right now, what you are currently believing is something anti-scientific, because you believe that code assembled itself. The most fantastic code we've ever seen assembled itself. And you're believing that in spite of our scientific observations. Our scientific observations is that codes don't assemble themselves.
Do we see evolution? We see things change over time, right? So a code can evolve. And in fact, we have used evolutionary algorithms to design things like antennas in space and such that no human could design. So evolution, as we understand it, actually works. We can demonstrate it in computers. We can demonstrate it in living things. So it would only make sense that DNA evolved from something else, right? So that's something we can actually see in nature, things evolving features, things evolving complexity, things evolving to respond to changing environments. But nobody has ever seen God. Nobody has ever, and it would be trivial for God to prove himself. It would be trivial for God to put a message on a cell or to give scientific. Why didn't God put in a Bible, wash your hands, there's germs, or there's a continent of America across the Atlantic Ocean, or there's nothing in Bible that wasn't known at that time. And
well, we're supposed to be having a scientific conversation, but you keep bringing up religion. These are all religious questions.
No, yeah, you're right. But we can see things evolve. We can see things evolve. We have seen things evolve. So it makes sense that DNA could evolve.
Why does it make sense that DNA can evolve?
Because we've seen evolution work. And
you're assuming evolution, though. How do you tell?
No, we demonstrated it. I told you the antennas on International Space Station, we use like genetic algorithms modeled after the process of evolution to design these things that humans could not design. So that's a demonstration that this process actually works. We have also seen like bacteria adapt to antibiotics. We have seen, new types of dogs and tomatoes and horses. We have seen features come about, so why couldn't DNA also evolve from something else?
Right, but
Sal,
how did the code emerge in the start?
Go ahead, Wesley.
From something else.
No. Something that wasn't a code?
Yeah, or a more simpler code or whatever, right? Something else, right?
Where did the code come about?
RNA.
Where did the information?
From something else, just like
RNA is physical. You need information that's external to RNA.
What?
You need information that's external to RNA to create.
Only thing you need is something that can replicate itself. That's the only thing you need, and then that kickstarts the process of evolution.
And we see self-replicating molecules in real time.
That's a lot.
Okay, Sal, do you want to say something here?
It would have to be something specific, but everything Mirza said, I falsified the last round, and he's just repeating it, so I'm not going to go there. What is not mentioned? I'm talking now. What is not mentioned is that even in naturalistic models, they have lots of fudge factors that are just postulated. There's no proof. Every model is going to have unprovable assumptions that have no mechanism, including the Big Bang. I mean, when I studied physics at Johns Hopkins, cosmology, page 17 in my cosmology book. Let me just read this. It says, during the 1950s and 60s, the Big Bang and steady state models battled for supremacy. Critics of the steady state model pointed out that the continuous creation of matter violates mass energy conservation. Supporters of the steady state model pointed out that the continuous creation of matter is no more observed than the instantaneous creation of the entire universe in a single Big Bang. That's naturalism right there. And it's invoking a miracle. We kind of use a more a euphemism. We call it a singularity. So let's not pretend naturalistic models don't have their miracles in them. This is nonsense. And then also to say evolution is our best model. How are you going to figure out what a better model is if you're not willing to admit that it's been falsified on so many levels? This is not science. Better
The
to
Bang
say,
model,
you may not have the
doesn't
answer,
it?
but it can't be this one. It can't be
Not
this
sure what your point is. Is your point that people
well,
come
I
up with
haven't finished my
explanations
point,
that are
so
sometimes
we've been
wrong? Because
talking
of course
for 2
you do.
hours in this chat, and I appreciate if you do not interrupt me.
I know, but you at some point I have to talk too.
Is that fair?
And I'm trying to clarify what you're saying. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Are you saying humans make
There's
mistakes?
no point in conversation if you're going to keep interrupting me. Thank you.
All right, go ahead. All right, well, I guess we stop.
No, seriously. I found the fair way to do this is why don't Rebecca, you give me how much time you would let me speak. You can give me 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes without interruption. I have my stopwatch and.
Okay, 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Is that enough? 2 minutes?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the time. I have my timer going here. I was saying every naturalistic model has these miracles in it. The polite word is singularity. But to say evolution's our best model when it's been falsified on so many levels, that's not science. You have to admit you're wrong to be able to start to find a better solution. And it is entirely possible there are things, starting with Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and Gödel's incompleteness theorem, that we will never know. We might have to accept it by faith. So the question is, which model might we adopt that we might even postulate gives us better predictions of the trajectory of how things go in the future? One thing we do know is that genetic algorithms and computers are not consistent. They are, first of all, intelligently designed by brilliant guys like Robert Marx, who, by the way, is an ID proponent. He rejects evolution. He doesn't find his genetic algorithms model what happened in nature. A testable prediction is the magnetic fields will decay. That would be really bad for old Earth. We might discover more things as we study the chemical dates, and we might find mechanisms to explain radioactive decay, such as heavy electron quasiparticles. And I happen to be studying quasiparticles right now through a book by an ID proponent who published in Cambridge University Press by the name of David Snoke. The other thing, it's been forgotten. In 2005, there was a professor from my university, Johns Hopkins, that said the universe is mental. It is worth going into that he's basically saying there is a God, and other physicists have said that. And finally, the genomes are decaying. Extinction is one mechanism of decay, and also genetic deterioration. And I'm at 1 minute, 55 seconds. Thank you, Rebecca.
I can answer that.
Thank you, Sal. Sure.
So I'm not sure what his point is. First of all, I never seen evolution being proven false. What I have seen is we can't explain this yet with evolution, but that's not a proof of evolution, therefore is not possible. Second, the genetic algorithms are designed based on the idea of evolution with natural selection. Yes, we made them, but we based them on this explanation of nature. It's a direct intent to do that, basically. What else? What he's saying is we don't know how Big Bang started. We don't know. We take many things of fate. And you know what? Yes, we're just humans. Humans have existed, blink of an eye, on a tiny dot in a big universe. They make a lot of mistakes. They don't know everything. There are things which we will never know. And you know what? That's fine. That's the nature of things. But you have this either human explanations have to be perfect or it's religion, which is a false dichotomy. Of course, we may never know answers to these things. We don't know what physics existed before Big Bang. We don't know what math existed then. We don't know what happened. Same thing with evolution. However, what we can do is we can make the most likely explanation given everything we've seen. And how can you test that? Well, you make predictions, like he said, and the model that kind of gives you the best predictions that you can test is the best model. That doesn't mean it's a foolproof model, but I actually haven't seen a model that's better than evolution in doing that. I haven't seen creationism make testable predictions. I haven't seen any other model, Lamarckian evolution model or whatever. So yeah, I mean, of course, there are holes. Of course, there are things we don't know. That's just the nature of life, which you'd expect in a random universe.
Well, Junior gave you some examples of testable predictions that creationists made, and they turned out to be right.
Can you remind me?
The magnetic fields and Neptune and Uranus, was it?
Yeah, so many. In fact, we always get the predictions right anyway. Dr. Humphrey, go research Dr. Humphrey's prediction. I believe it was 2 planets. I think it was Neptune and Pluto, something like that. I could be wrong. But 2 planets that he correctly predicted the force of the magnetic field, and his secular friends were wrong.
This is in the Bible.
No, this is not in the Bible.
These are scientific predictions that came to be true based on creation science. This is what I'm talking about.
How did creation science predict magnetic fields on Neptune?
It's because I don't know why Shult's shaking his head, but he can respond in a minute. But it was because he didn't assume, as many scientists do, the age of the universe being so old and the age of the solar system being so old. Instead, he did it based on the age that he thinks the solar system is, which is in the thousands of years. And so he was able to accurately predict the magnetic fields. It much better, not a perfect prediction, but much better than the evolutionary predictions.
Yeah, I can't comment because I don't follow logic. I don't see how young Earth would predict magnetic field.
Exactly. You're not engaged with creation literature, so of course you're not gonna know.
Right. But there's no there. I mean, how is that
predictable? Let me just bring an objective point. I don't know if you are keeping up with the James Webb observations, and I think now Rebecca would know more about this than me because I haven't looked too much into it. But apparently in each Z, we find the same types of galaxies in each Z, which I don't know about you, but, where's the galaxy evolution? You know what I mean?
So that's actually a problem for Big Bang. Are you saying Big Bang didn't happen?
For the whole secular model, the galaxy evolution over billions of years, that's not what we're finding.
So hold on. So if Big Bang didn't happen, do you think universe was created 6,000 years ago?
You're not understanding. We're finding the same types of galaxies in each Z. That means this time hasn't really happened. These millions of years because you know how spiral galaxies, they turn around, right? The arms of the center spins faster than the arms at the outer edges of the galaxy, right? If deep time was true, there would be a spin. There's the so-called spinning problem, whatever it's called.
Right.
Anyway,
there's a problem with I follow up on these things. The point is this.
Somebody is giving
that comes from.
Yeah, I can hear something.
That comes from us humans being tiny and existing for a fraction of time. Of course, we don't know anything, right? Of course, you're going to find.
Okay, guys, we've been going for 2.5 hours now, almost. Well, 2 hours and 15 minutes. How about if everybody gets to make their final points, and then we can shut it down.
I'm sorry for monopolizing conversation. I should have let other gentlemen speak more. So feel free to cut me off if I come up next time.
Since Sal, you're shaking your head and putting your hands in your face, so can you share what you want to share right now?
Junior, I appreciate your passion, but the way you argue the creation model is not very helpful. You're exposing yourself to too much attack. You don't have to start with the creation model. Just start with basic physics. So I was shaking my head when you said Russell Humphrey started from the creation model. You don't have to. You could just use Cowling's theorem that is based on Maxwell's equations and you could see that the magnetic field should decay. He actually was on my show talking about the L over R constant, time constant. For those electrical engineers will know this. This is the decay rate. So he's estimating the inductance and the resistance. It's very straightforward, time constant. And even Wikipedia at one point was saying the Earth's magnetic field will decay in 1600 years to negligible amounts. Russell Humphreys and said, well, maybe multiply that by 5 because that's 1600 is a time constant. So you don't have to invoke creationism. Start with basic physics, the 5 major laws of physics, which would be Hamilton's mechanics, Maxwell's equations of electrodynamics, statistical mechanics, Boltzmann's equations, quantum mechanics, represented by Schrodinger's equation, and relativity. Go with that. You can assail evolution, you can assail old Earth with accepted laws of physics. You don't have to assume a creation model, and you'll be able to defeat your opponents more effectively. By the way, if you want to learn how to do this, I'm going to be teaching a college level ID and creation course, and some of it is already, I'm going to try to show some of the shows with Rebecca. So sorry to be critical, Junior. You're going to do well. You just need to
No. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So I really appreciate the feedback, and I completely agree. I guess I'm just one of those type of person that I'm not shy to use the name creation. I'm actually proud, I guess. But I understand, Sal. You mean like in arguments, right? Like in objective arguments, there's no need to use. I understand. There's no need to use the word creation. But yeah. And
I'm sorry to say, just one add thing. You can kill evolutionary theory with more understanding of biochemistry, population genetics, probability, and physics. They'll be obliterated. We're running over them. You don't even need to start with the creationist assumption or say we don't have to argue about naturalism or about the designer. You could just say it's falsified by what we know. It's
exactly. And would you agree, Sal? Would you agree that Dr. Humphrey guessed more closely than his secular friends, using the physics, not creation model, but using the physics, like you said right now, that he was more close to his secular friends? Is that true for the 2 planets?
For now, we should be waiting on the data a little more. We're going to watch it, but I will tell you, climate change, NASA is saying we are losing our ozone layer, and it's because of holes in the magnetic field. And it's like, yeah, well, okay, how long has this weakness been there? Otherwise, if it were this weak over millions of years, we wouldn't be here. So it'll be outside of our lifetime, but this is a testable prediction. And so let's just say, I'll just be a little cautious about that. There are some creationists that don't agree with his usage of Cowling's theorem. We'll see how it plays out. But the data over the last 170 some years is a continuous decay that looks like an exponential decay. And that's consistent, by the way, with the L over R model of inductance. You electrical engineers know exactly what I'm talking about, the L over R constant in RLC circuits. Thank you.
I see. I'll just make my final close, and then the other people can speak as well. Well, it seems like Dr. Howard has left. I guess I can just leave my final arguments with some of the stuff that he said that I couldn't answer before, like soil, for example. I mean, he knows that I believe in Genesis. So, soil is dirt, and Genesis says that, God created the soil and the earth, the ground came forth and such. And we find so many benefits. Look at the amazing benefits of soil. Just because soil is mixed with bits of rock today, that's actually consistent with the flood, because the perfect soil that God created pre-flood got mixed with all the tiny bits of rock. And then uniformitarians see that today and they say, oh, look, guys, soil formed like this because there's tiny pieces of rock, weathered rock inside the soil. Therefore, soil formed like this. That is circular. So for Dr. Howard to use soil as a proof of deep time is really silly. And for oil and coal, has been proven it can naturally be formed in 6 years. I can show the papers. Naturally formed coal. They didn't show any charts on it, and the chemicals are exactly the same chemicals as natural coal and oil as well. And the compaction ratio, they say, we need way more vegetation to create the coal beds that we see today. False, because when you actually look at the evidence, we find that the compaction ratio is not 10:1. So you don't need 10 feet of peat in order to create 1 feet of coal. That compaction ratio is completely wrong. The compaction ratio in reality is more close to 2:1 or 1:1. and that's why we find coal balls with beautifully preserved fossils inside the coal beds, showing that the compaction ratio indeed is closer to 1-to-1. And there's also we found also a dinosaur footprints that in a coal mine where the print was not squashed at all. So that shows that this 10-to-1 squeezing effect didn't happen as well. So yeah, there's more than enough vegetation to create all the coal beds that we see today. So many things like this that he constantly misrepresents the creation side. I just wanted to say that, and if he wants to come again next time to talk about these things, that's fine. But every single thing that he says fits in creation. That's all I'm gonna say.
Thank you, Junior. Okay, who wants to share their final thoughts next?
I'll go because I have to go quick. Just thank you for having me on. I've enjoyed listening to everybody. I just want to, I guess, sum it up to say that if you want to challenge these scientific theories, then fine, go ahead. But you're going to have to offer better answers, better solutions, better predictions. And to be honest, most of the scientists out in the world don't even know you exist. Or they go about their daily work and never give you a second thought. But so the fact that it is in public opinion and it shapes our politics, and that's what matters to me.
Right.
Great, thank you guys, and
Thank you so much for coming on, Tyler. And yes, I know I'm a little fish, but I'm just doing what I can. And actually, the point that the reason I'm doing this is because I don't want people like you to believe a false idea about reality that keeps you from the truth, which is God loves you.
Yeah, I know you believe that, and I appreciate the sentiment. So I will see you guys later. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Tyler. All right. First, I'd like to apologize if I don't always have sense of when I'm talking too much or offending people or being too loud. So feel free to correct me at any point. So creationism was there first. That was the first explanation. That's what we started with, and we ended up with evolution. We ended up with Big Bang. We ended up with why? Because we made observations and we followed the evidence. That means that at some point creationism just got rejected. It was there first. People took it seriously, and now they don't. And I feel the issue I have is that there seems to be a focus on minute things, with the implication that either this tiny little thing must be explained, or therefore all of evolution is wrong. And I haven't really seen any proof that evolution is not possible. What I have seen is arguments that makes it difficult for evolution to explain something. But that doesn't mean that evolution didn't do it. It just means we haven't figured out how yet. The other thing is, come on, like how would you explain galaxies that are hundreds of millions of light years away, for example? How did light reach us? There's like trees with thousands of rings in them. We have writing older than 6,000 years old. We know how quickly radioactive things decay. Also, the flood. If there was water way past the highest peak, where did that water go? Like, where did it come from? Where did it go? There's just like so many holes in like religious point of view. You can nitpick evolution. You can find things evolution cannot explain. There are some things that are super difficult, just like you can with like moon landing, just like you can with like round Earth versus flat Earth. If you talk to those people, they will give you all kinds of problems with accepted theories, and they will find all kinds of explanations how something sometime was proven wrong or whatever. But if you look at like preponderates of evidence, and what all the scientists believe, it's just overwhelming. It really is. And in fact, scientists want to prove evolution wrong. you don't think they want to be famous? You don't think they want to get that Nobel Prize? They have no stake in this. They wanna be the next big name that creates something great, and they just have no incentive to basically support evolution. But it's the evidence that supports it, not people's egos or some conspiracy. Right. But thank
Wow,
you.
Mirza, there's so much there to respond to, and I'm not going to be able to remember everything. But actually, we don't have writing beyond 6,000 years, so that's actually something. But and I can't respond to everything that you said, but I will say about the galaxies also. If galaxies are a problem, if the distant starlight, we do have an explanation for that. I won't go into explaining it right now, but you also have a galaxy problem because you have no explanation for why the galaxies still have spiral arms, according to the model that you're believing. The only thing that has been inserted to try to save that is dark matter. And if you say you don't believe in things that you can't observe, but you're believing in dark matter, you're choosing to believe something. And this is my final statement. So you're not going to respond to this because that was your final statement. But I mean, I guess I can let you respond in 1 minute if you want to. But look,
of course, I have a problem. I'm human. Guessing, we don't know. Some things we don't know. That's the way it is.
But the thing is that we could go back and forth all day. You're saying that there's only that we are nitpicking at evolution. We are not nitpicking. We're saying all the major points of evolution have been falsified. Like everything, like it's done. It's over. Like it's
falsified.
And you're saying that you're saying that the evidence is so strong for it. But why is it? I've now done 13 streams, and the only 3 positive pieces of evidence that I've found so far, which are even very weak, are Tiktaalik, Archaeopteryx, and then whatever Howard said today that I have to go look up. And I'm looking up your onion evolution. I mean, the onion thing you brought up, and I will respond to that. But I can tell you, it's not looking good for onion evolution because you know what? There's no history of the onion. It appears out of nowhere. It's another example of something appearing out of nowhere. But I'm going to do a full explanation for you on that. I just have to get into more of the genetics. Okay. But the point is, evolution, we're not nitpicking it, but we're saying the evidence is not there. Okay. And so I'd hope you come on and talk again. I'll just end it at that, but I want to hear what Wes has to say about it. Or anything you want to say.
Yeah, I'd say I have 4 comments, and they're sort of bigger picture things. The first one is about predictions, about what does a creationist model predict, what does a sort of deep time evolutionist materialist model predict. And I'd say, for me at least, there are 2 major pillars. There's decay and teleology. So in a young Earth model, we predict less decay, more teleology. In a old Earth model, they should predict less teleology, more decay, because there's been more time and things aren't directed by a designer, right? So I think as far as testing those kind of things, we can look at I guess we could look at things like highly conserved genes, which is something that I've been looking at. And I think that's really interesting that, for instance, like the ABO blood group is an example that I go to, where a lot of mammals have it, a lot of, like all the primates have it, the great apes, and we all share the A and the B, which are the functional alleles. All the O's, and there are research papers I can give you on this, are all species specific. Yet the O does confer selective advantage. It protects you against pathogens, protects your red blood cells against pathogens, because you don't have antigens connecting to your blood cells where pathogens can hook up on. So the question is, like, why for the 20 million years that this genus existed, do we see, it's so highly conserved when a single break can make a serious selective advantage, so that entire populations, like for instance, if you look at like Native American populations, almost like over 90% of fixation of the O allele, which is a broken A or B. It's basically there are a few different kinds of O's. There's frame shifts. The major one, O1, is a frame shift allele, and then there are other alleles which are sort of like noise that breaks the protein coding.
Right. So, quick question: does
yeah.
that prove that evolution didn't happen, or are you saying you cannot explain that given evolution?
I'm not saying it proves anything. I'm saying it's
not doesn't exclude evolution. You just cannot explain it with evolution. Is that it? It's one of the things that are unexplained. Would you say that? I'm sorry, my face is not in the chat.
No, you're good. You're good. I think it's a piece of evidence, right? Like no worldview is going to be made. No worldview is going to turn on a single piece of evidence.
But does it prove that evolution is impossible, or does it just it just not explained by evolution?
I would say that particular gene makes evolution that much less likely that it occurred, at least in the way that people describe it, which is that.
So there could be evolution, but it's less likely.
Yeah, I'd say if you just looked at that piece of evidence, that would be the conclusion that you draw.
Right, but it's not proof that evolution did not happen. It's just you just think it makes it less likely.
Yeah, but we're not. Yeah, but we want to look at basically going back to the bigger picture. We want to look at what does the decay look like? You know, how much decay is there, and can we account for that in a young Earth, or is it better accounted for in an older Earth? And then, what does the teleology look like? What is the function, and is that better accounted for, you know, in a designed world or a non-designed world? And then I'd say I have 3 more points. One is the syllogism. Mizra, you didn't really respond to the point I was making, so I can.
Right, because I said my last word. I don't want to drag this on.
Okay,
we've been on for 2.5 hours. I can respond next time.
But I'll just lay it out in a syllogism. So basically, premise 1, DNA is a code. And this is basically how Stephen Meyer would lay it out. DNA is a code. Premise 2, all codes are designed. Conclusion, therefore, DNA is designed. So you're gonna have to show one of those premises is wrong, because that's a deductive argument. Therefore,
how do you know that all codes are designed?
And I'll give you time to think about that. You can respond to that.
Yeah, how do you know all codes are designed? Have you seen all codes? Right. Doesn't matter though. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. You were talking about we follow the evidence, and this is an epistemological thing, right?
Right.
But what is evidence, right?
Right.
How do we follow evidence? We don't actually follow evidence. We have a model, and then we test the model, right? By comparing it with observation. So you can't independently look at evidence. You have to test it in a model.
Right.
Right. And then my final point is a big reason, in my opinion, for scientists not verging out of the mainstream notion is because there's such high pressure for citations and the need for sort of a influence/success metric early on in their career. So they're basically, the only way to get your foot in the door is to get people's attention, and that's my opinion. So I'll end it there.
Awesome comments. Thank you. Okay, and Sal asked for another chance to speak, so we're going to let Sal end it. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate everybody. This was a great conversation today. Thank you all for participating. And go ahead, Sal. You're muted, Sal.
I'm sorry, Rebecca. Thank you for having me on, gentlemen, and Rebecca. There have been defections in the evolutionary community by top evolutionary biologists such as Richard Sternberg and Stanley Southey. Stanley Southey had this to say. He said, do I have it? I hope I haven't lost the quote. I lost the quote. I had it right here. Let me recover it if.
All right,
Please go.
musical interlude.
Okay, I got it. Stanley Coffey, evolutionary biologist. Darwinian evolutionary theory was my field of specialization in biology. Among other things, I wrote a textbook on the subject 30 years ago. Meanwhile, however, I have become an apostate from Darwinian theory and has described it as part of modernism's origination myth. So it is not uniform that this whole thing about natural selection actually works when evolutionary biologists themselves are questioning it, rejecting it. It's nonsense. It's not what happens in reality. We do see the dominant mode of evolution is genome reduction, not complexification. Top evolutionary biologist Eugene Koonin. I'm not saying anything that's outside of the mainstream. It is Mears' stuff that is outside the cutting edge of evolutionary biology. I'm actually, as a creationist, more in line with evolutionary thinking. So, this whole thing of just repeating this stuff that it's not falsified. It's like, no, it's not even the best theory. Evolutionary biologists are rejecting it. Now, as far as distant starlight, when I studied cosmology, they're invoking variable speed of light. It's okay to invoke that in things like inflation to fix their Big Bang, but then suddenly it's crank science if young Earth creationists invoke anything like it. There's more to say, but as far as the heat problem, I'm studying heavy electron quasi-particles that may fix that, and that's all I have to say. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, so much.
Talking to you all.
Have a good day.
Evolution. Monkey look kind of like a person. Monkey look kind of like a person.